The brim comes down over his eyes. The great hall vanishes. The world narrows to darkness, to cloth, to breath and whispering thought. In the canon you remember that whisper ends in resistance, not Slytherin. A frightened boy clinging to an image of red and gold he does not yet understand. But tonight, we step into a different story. Tonight, the argument inside Harry Potter's mind does not end in defiance. It ends in surrender. Plenty of courage, the hat murmurs, its voice a slow curl of ancient magic around his skull. But you could be great, you know. So much potential, so much hunger to prove you are more than the cupboard they left you in. This is important, because in this world, Harry does not repeat Gryffindor like a charm against the dark. He hesitates. He wonders what greatness might mean, if it might finally make him feel alive. The pause is brief. It is enough. The hat decides. Slytherin, the word falls like a stone into water. The ripples move outward in concentric, invisible circles through the great hall. For a heartbeat, there is only silence. No roar of Gryffindor applause, no Weasley twins pounding the table. Only a collective intake of breath as the boy who lived stands, the serpent's name wrapped around him like a shroud. You know the other image by heart. Harry between Ron and Hermione at the Gryffindor table, faces lit by candlelight and relief, red and gold banners blazing overhead. Here, that vision is a grave that was never dug. The bench at Gryffindor stands oddly empty, a space where a replica of the future should be and is not. Instead, he walks the colder path. Past the lion's table, past the life he might have had, toward green and silver waiting like deep water. Draco Malfoy's eyes follow him, not with open scorn, but with a new, calculating curiosity. A potential ally, a potential rival, perhaps both. Snape's gaze is darker still, fixed on the son of James Potter, now claimed by the house that once sheltered his own broken loyalties. Not Dumbledore, who had spoken so serenely of choices over blood, can quite keep the light in his eyes from dimming for a single, telling heartbeat. Beneath it all, the lake waits above the Slytherin common room, black and patient. Tonight, the boy who lived will sleep under the weight of that water, under ceilings tinged green by drifting currents, surrounded by whispers that Tom Riddle once walked these same stones. So here is the question that bends the entire war. If the house that shaped Voldemort now shapes Harry Potter, does the conflict you thought you knew simply break or become something far more subtle and far more terrifying? When ambition and prophecy share a dormitory, when the scar on his forehead meets the serpent on his chest, which one writes the future? From the troll in the dungeon to the Chamber of Secrets, from the graveyard resurrection to the Battle of Hogwarts. Every familiar moment will twist around this single different word at the sorting. The path is the same in outline, but the truth beneath it is altered. The alliances, the betrayals, the cost. Tonight, we follow Harry down the steps into the dungeons and into that altered truth. The candles are burning lower, the banners have already chosen their colors. Now we see what changes when the boy who lived sits among the snakes. The candles flicker above the great hall. The hat slips over his eyes. The choice tightens like a noose. In this version, Harry does not plead. He does not whisper Gryffindor like a lifeline. He hesitates. He listens. When the hat murmurs of ambition, of greatness, of a mind that bends instead of breaks, he does not recoil. He simply goes very still. This is important, because the hat is not forcing him. It is naming something that is already there. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but Harry does not know that. What he knows is a cupboard, a locked door, a lifetime of being smaller than the people who hurt him. He knows that a man with a high, cold laugh killed his parents, and that this man was called Slytherin's heir in every frightened whisper. He has built a private religion around one conviction: I will not be like him. And yet, the hat shows him another truth. Powerlessness is its own kind of grave. It shows him flashes of corridors where he is hunted, of a stone that grants immortality, of a basilisk's eye, of a dark-robed figure calling him boy with contempt. It shows him that bravery alone will not be enough, that cunning, that ruthless calculation, that cold reading of enemies and friends alike might be the only charm that keeps him alive. The boy on the stool is split between terror and hunger. Terror of darkness, of green light, of a snake's hiss in his blood. Hunger for control, for never again being the replica of a victim, small and breakable, waiting for someone else to decide his fate. Not Dumbledore, who had let him grow in a house without love. Not Hagrid, who had rescued him but could not stay. Not Sirius, who had once been willing to kill a rat in the street rather than think 3 moves ahead. So he does nothing. He allows. The hat, relieved, does not need to argue. It simply pronounces the word that will rewrite the story. Slytherin, the banner above him, flares green and silver. The table that in another life would have been his enemy rises to greet him. Draco Malfoy's hand reaches out, not in sneering dismissal but in welcome, and the first friendship of this new world takes shape around a shared table instead of a shared duel. Slytherin here is not a cartoon villain's lair, it is a crucible. Stone walls, low ceiling, the lake pressing darkly against the windows. A house where ambition is not a sin, but a survival plan. Where children learn that information is armor and secrets are weapons. A place where a lonely child might finally be taught how not to be prey. This is important, because the consequences will not arrive in a single dramatic stroke. They will seep. Friendships that never form with Ron and Hermione. Rivalries with Gryffindors that harden into obsessions. Teachers who look at Harry and see not a symbol of hope, but a potential weapon in Slytherin colours. A Dark Lord who hears where the boy who lived has been sorted and feels the prophecy shift beneath his feet. We are not watching an evil Harry pantomime. We are entering a moral labyrinth. The same soul, the same scar, the same capacity for love and sacrifice, now tempered in green instead of gold. Each choice in that dungeon common room will either corrupt or refine him, etching new lines over the old canon. The path to the stone, to the chamber, to the graveyard in Little Hangleton still waits. But with every step, the question deepens. In a house built on serpents and secrets, who does Harry Potter become? The answer begins with the first night under the lake, when he lies awake and realizes that for the first time the monsters in the dark might be his classmates and his teachers. He is not alone in the dark. The hat is still there with him, a weight on his skull and a whisper in his blood. The feast roars around them, but for Harry, the world has narrowed to a single voice deciding what kind of grave he will one day lie in. In canon, that voice hesitated. The hat saw plenty of courage, yes, but it lingered on other words: thirst to prove himself, resourcefulness, a nice and thirst to prove himself. It tasted the echo of another boy with a scar hidden on the inside. Tom Riddle's shadow in the shape of a frightened child. This is important. because the difference between Gryffindor and Slytherin that night is not a question of nature, but of emphasis. In one story, Harry's whispered "Not Slytherin" becomes a lifeline the Hat chooses to honor. In this story, the Hat hears the same plea and weighs it against something colder: survival. The Hat is old, older than Dumbledore, older than the castle itself as the students know it. It remembers Tom Riddle's mind, sharp, hungry, precise as a cutting charm. It feels the same tensile potential in Harry, the same capacity for greatness, but braided with something Tom never had: an instinct to protect rather than dominate. Not Dumbledore, who had always trusted that courage and love would be enough, is in Harry's head now. Not Hagrid, who had spoken of all Slytherin as if they were a single serpent. The only counsel Harry has is fear. The only counsel the Hat has is pattern and prophecy. The wand matters. Ollivander's murmur, "The phoenix gave another feather," is not just poetic symmetry. The shared phoenix core is a replica of possibility, identical magic, divergent will. The grave was empty of inevitability. The feather that chose Voldemort also chose Harry, and the Hat knows what that means. Power like that will not stay small. It will either be trained or it will erupt. Slytherin, with its discipline, its ruthless hierarchy, offers a crucible rather than a bonfire. Ambition, cunning, leadership, resourcefulness, stripped of house prejudice, these are the instincts of a child who has slept in a cupboard and learned that adults cannot be trusted to come when he cries. A neglected, abused boy does not dream of glory for its own sake. He dreams of never being helpless again. Slytherin speaks to that wound. It offers a plan. Learn the rules, bend them, command respect so you are never locked away and forgotten. Lily was a charms prodigy, but Harry has survived on a different kind of magic, the quiet, relentless decision to endure. So the Hat makes a different calculation. Gryffindor would give him warmth, yes, but also visibility, expectation, a straight path to martyrdom. Slytherin promises something colder and more practical. Anonymity among those the Dark Lord expects to claim, access to his enemy's children, time to understand the serpent before facing it. The Hat is not merely sorting preference. It is arranging pieces on a board it knows will one day be soaked in blood. And if this is true, if it saw greatness that could grow in green and silver as easily as in red and gold, then another question coils in the silence beneath the lake. What grows in Harry Potter when that greatness is fed by the same house that once nurtured Tom Riddle? And who exactly is planning for that? So Harry follows the grain. Not the red he was promised in every whispered story of Gryffindor glory he overheard on the train, but the muted glimmer of Slytherin badges bobbing ahead of him as the prefects lead the first years down and further down still. The air cools as they leave the torch-bright corridors. Stone gives back the sound of their footsteps in a low, damp echo. The walls sweat with age. Water beads in the mortar like a reminder that the ground itself remembers older wars, older plans, older children marching into houses that would shape them. This is important. A staircase narrows, a ceiling drops, and for a moment Harry feels as though the castle is closing its stone fist around his ribs. Then the passage opens. A bare stretch of wall, a murmured password, and the dungeon peels back to reveal a room that does not feel like a room at all. It feels like a submerged cathedral. The ceiling arches low and long, ribbed with blackened beams, green-tinged lamps hang like drowned stars. Beyond the tall, iron-framed windows, the black lake presses close, its weight made visible in the slow drift of weed and the pale bellies of fish gliding past, casting moving shadows over old stone. In Gryffindor, the common room will be high and round and full of scarlet. In another life, Harry would climb spiraling stairs, lungs burning pleasantly, to a tower where the night wind taps against warm glass. He would fall asleep to Ron Weasley's easy chatter, to the crackle of a fire that smells like wood smoke and comfort, beneath a quilt of noise and belonging. Here, the fire burns low and greenish, its light competing with the lake's shifting reflections. Here, the sofas are deep and dark, arranged not in a welcoming circle, but in alcoves that invite secrets. Here, the silence has teeth. Draco Malfoy turns to him in that silence. The smirk Harry met on the train is still there, but it has softened, become something like recognition, like the satisfaction of a prophecy fulfilled. Of course the boy who lived belongs here. Of course the snake on his chest will matter more than the lion he never meets. Pansy Parkinson's gaze moves over Harry not with open hostility but with assessment, measuring value. Blaise Zabini watches as if Harry is an intricate charm he has not yet decided to trust or dismantle. Older students murmur, not Dumbledore, who had praised Gryffindor courage in every feast speech for decades. Not Hagrid, who had told Harry that no witch or wizard had gone bad who was not in Slytherin. Not Sirius, who had once sworn he would rather die than wear green and silver. The ones who whisper are 6th years with prefect badges, 7th years with dark mark rumours trailing behind them like smoke, children and almost soldiers who knew at once what this sorting means. The grave was empty in their expectations, now something unexpected is alive in its place. Harry stands in the centre of the room, feeling the world tilt. A flicker of guilt tugs his eyes upward, towards stone and distance and the invisible line where a tower must be rising into the night. Somewhere up there, a red-headed boy is unpacking a trunk, laughing with someone else, telling the story of the boy who lived, who sat beside him and then vanished into the wrong house. Harry swallows. He does not know about Lily's brilliance, does not know that Lily was a charms prodigy, that somewhere far away people are alive who built protections and plans around the idea of his survival. He only knows the weight of eyes and a cold of the stone under his shoes. Survival, he decides, must come first. Feeling can wait. So he answers Draco's sharp questions instead of Ron's friendly ones. He lets the conversation become an exchange of information and advantage rather than a stumble into kinship. He listens as an older girl explains the rules of Slytherin loyalty. You protect those who protect you. You keep each other's secrets. You never ever show the whole truth of yourself to anyone you cannot use or trust. It is not corruption, not yet. It is a different language of belonging, mutual benefit instead of open-handed generosity, calculated trust instead of immediate faith. A house that teaches him that a promise is a kind of contract, that a favor is a kind of debt, that friendship can be a carefully balanced charm rather than a wild, unthinking leap. Pattern interrupt comes in the smallest sound. A bubble of lake water bursts against the glass with a soft, hollow pop, and every Slytherin head turns for half a heartbeat, as if expecting something to emerge from the depths. Nothing does. Not tonight. But beneath that black water, the reflection has already changed. Harry's, and the houses, and the wars. And as he follows the boy's prefect toward the narrow door that leads to the first-year dormitory, he does not yet realize that this room under the lake will become both his refuge and his testing ground. The place where he learns that in Slytherin, the cost of loyalty is always written in advance. He will pay it. The question, as the lamps dim and the green light fades, is who will pay it with him. He is not alone in that room under the lake. The moment the prefect's footsteps fade, another rhythm replaces them, the soft, deliberate tap of polished shoes on stone as Draco Malfoy crosses the dormitory with the inevitability of a plan already set in motion. The first handshake on the train had been framed, in one version of the story, as a mistake Harry corrected. In this version, it is a prologue. This is important. Draco stops beside Harry's bed, pale hair catching the green light like a banner. He holds out his hand again, not the nervous, testing offer of a boy seeking an ally, but the calculated gesture of a Slytherin who has understood in a single evening that the boy who lived now sleeps beneath the same stone ceiling. Draco does not see a classmate. He sees a resource that must be claimed or controlled before anyone else dares to try. Pride moves him first. To walk into the manor at Christmas and say, "Father Potter is one of us, and he listens to me." To feel Lucius's cold approval like a medal pinned to his chest. But beneath the pride there is fear, the quiet, gnawing terror of disappointing the man whose name weighs on every professor's tongue. And beneath even that, something stranger, a genuine, almost unwilling curiosity about the thin, watchful boy with the lightning scar who had rejected him once and yet somehow survived a curse that should have left only a grave. Harry studies the offered hand. He remembers the insult to Ron, the contempt for the Weasleys spoken as if poverty were a stain darker than any dark mark. He also remembers the cupboard, the hunger, the way cold could feel like a verdict. Slytherin has already shown him its teeth. Protection here will not be given, it will be negotiated. Aligning or appearing to align with Malfoy might buy him time, information, shelter from cruelties he has not yet learned to name. He takes the hand. The choice is not trust, it is strategy. From that night, their interactions become a careful choreography of masks. Draco walks him through Slytherin etiquette, which beds to avoid, which names to speak with reverence, which with a carefully veiled disdain. He explains blood purity like it is weather, an old, inevitable pattern in the air. Harry pretends not to flinch at the word mudblood, files away every story, every offhand remark about the Dark Lord, as if each were a fragment of a broken replica of the truth. Not Dumbledore, who had watched the sorting with narrowed eyes, nor Snape, who sees only James's face, understands how quickly Harry learns to listen more than he speaks. Each boy measures the other. Draco watches how Harry's magic flares when he is cornered, how he refuses to bow his head even when it would be safer. Harry watches how Draco's cruelty sharpens in groups and softens almost imperceptibly when they are alone. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. The prophecy's vessel now stands reflected in another boy's pale, wary gaze. In this timeline, Draco is not merely a schoolyard enemy. He is the first mirror held up to what Harry might become if he lets Slytherin write his story completely. A living warning that the line between survivor and tyrant is thinner than any scar. Snape sees him under green and silver. The Great Hall is still echoing with the hat's last word when his gaze locks on the small, stunned boy at the Slytherin table. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. Snape had built his life on that absence, on the belief that Lily's son would be safely distant, abstract, a duty more than a presence. Now James's face, arrogant in its bone structure, is framed by Lily's eyes, bewildered and bright beneath a serpent banner. This is important. The symbol hits him first. The snake, his house, his sin. The place where he once whispered the very prophecy that marked this child for death. He feels an immediate, visceral rejection, as if the green on the boy's tie is a dark mark tightening around a too thin throat. Harry Potter and Slytherin is not part of any plan he agreed to. It feels like a cruel joke written by magic itself. Snape has always lived between oaths. His hatred for James is not theoretical, it is a graveyard of humiliations, a long, ugly story carved into school corridors and half-remembered hexes. His vow to protect Lily's child, however, is older and deeper than any house allegiance, a binding that began the night he begged for her life and understood too late what his choices had done. Now those two currents collide in the most intimate way possible. The boy is his student, his house member, his direct responsibility. As head of Slytherin, he cannot look away. He must monitor bed assignments, patrol the common room, sign permission slips, hear complaints. He knew he would have to guard the boy who lived. He did not expect to supervise his bedtime. In the classroom, the cruelty shifts. In canon, distance allowed performance, public humiliation, cutting remarks, points slashed from Gryffindor with theatrical disdain. Here, the theatre is smaller and more suffocating. He still docks points from Harry with ruthless precision, still sneers at perceived arrogance, still uses sarcasm like a blade. But when older Slytherins crowd Harry after a lesson, testing the legend, probing for weakness, Snape appears with unnerving speed. A single word. A detention reassigned. A threat, quiet and cold, that makes even sixth years step back. The house sees only favoritism reversed, a perverse protection. Harry feels only that his jailer is also his shield. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated so many layers of protection, could have designed a more intimate torment. Dumbledore, in fact, quietly approves. A Slytherin Harry under Snape's eye is a Harry surrounded by ambition yet buffered from Gryffindor recklessness. The headmaster believes proximity will keep the boy safer, that Snape's divided loyalties will resolve, as they always have, on the side of Lily's memory. He does not account for the emotional war this arrangement will wage on both of them. And so, on a late autumn night, Snape stands in the doorway of the Slytherin common room, black robes blending with stone and shadow. Harry sits by the green-lit fire, a potions text open, quill unmoving, pretending to study while he listens for footsteps. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere far from this dungeon her son's protection hums, invisible and absolute, while here another, harsher guardianship watches. Snape studies the boy's bent head and wonders what exactly he is guarding. A weapon sharpened by prophecy, a victim trapped by house and history, or both waiting to choose. The truth is that even he cannot yet tell, which is precisely when something in the corridor outside begins to change. The corridor shifts first, not with magic, but with murmurs, a rustle of robes, a collective intake of breath, the sound of a story breaking before it has even begun. In the Great Hall, the hat has already decided. Harry Potter walks not toward the lion, but toward the serpent. This is important. The candles sway in an invisible draught as he crosses the floor past the Gryffindor table that has half risen to greet him. toward the wrong banner and the wrong colors, while every eye in the hall tries to reconcile prophecy with green and silver. On the train, it had been simple. Ron's awkward jokes about sandwiches, the easy sharing of chocolate frogs, the grave little confession about being the sixth son who never quite measured up. A boy hungry for a friend who did not already know his brothers. A boy who, for a brief compartment's worth of time, believed he had found one. Then Hermione Granger had slid the door open, all brisk efficiency and ink-stained certainty, fixing Harry's glasses with a charm that worked on the first try. Lily was a charms prodigy, but Hermione has never met her. She only knows the name from books. She corrects Ron, recites Hogwarts history, and in that cramped space the outline of a trio forms: courage, cleverness, and a boy in oversized clothes who has never been chosen for anything. The hat severs it in a single word. Slytherin. Ron watches Harry walk away and feels something in his chest tilt. The boy who lived, who laughed at his jokes, who chose his compartment when there were others, now choosing Malfoy's table instead. His ears burn, his throat tightens. The old insecurities wake like dragons in a vault, too poor, too ordinary, too replaceable. Of course Harry would want the House of Power and Pureblood names. Of course he would want what Ron has never had. Resentment takes root where hurt should be. It will matter later, when he hears Harry's name spoken with a new kind of suspicion, when green-trimmed robes move as a unit and he is on the other side. Hermione's reaction is quieter, but no less decisive. She has read about Slytherin. She knows the statistics that professors do not say aloud. The dark wizards who rose from that house like smoke from the same grave. She is fascinated by the hat's choice, by the implication that the boy with the scar is ambitious, cunning, perhaps even dangerous. Yet she is also disappointed in a way she does not yet have language for. The first boy she helped sits now among those she has been warned about. Without Harry as the bridge, Ron and Hermione still clash and still, eventually, bond in Gryffindor. But the rhythm is off. The troll in the bathroom is handled with more fear and less instinctive trust. Their friendship grows, but around a Harry-shaped absence, their adventures slightly smaller. Their courage slightly less certain because there is no chosen one at their center to justify the risk. Pattern interrupt. If Harry is not their anchor, who is? Not Dumbledore, who had plans rather than presence. Not Hagrid, who had warmth but not constancy inside the tower's walls. Perhaps Neville, stumbling into bravery earlier. Or perhaps no one at all, leaving Gryffindor fragmented while Slytherin quietly closes ranks around its unexpected prize. And in that other common room, beneath the lake's green light, the question inverts. Who will be Harry's moral anchor in a house that rewards secrecy over confession, clever lies over uncomfortable truth? Not Sirius, who had never been allowed near. The grave was empty of the godfather he might have known. The boy who lived sits among serpents, and the story tilts, waiting for someone, anyone, to pull him back toward the light. The candles were still trembling when the screaming began. This is important. Panic moves faster than magic, and in the great hall it spread in a single shuddering breath as Quirrell staggered forward, turban askew, eyes rolling with rehearsed terror. Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know. Then he collapsed, a replica of fainting, carefully choreographed. The grave was empty of sense. Benches scraped, children cried out, teachers rose with wands half drawn. Dumbledore's voice cracked like a spell across stone, ordering prefects to their houses, staff to the threat, the ancient plan of containment unfolding almost by reflex. Slytherin to the dungeons, Gryffindor to their tower, keep them separated, keep them penned. But the words in the dungeons hung in the air like a curse that no one dispelled. The Slytherin prefects, green badges glinting, began to marshal their house with clipped authority, turning the youngest toward the very depths the troll was said to haunt. Not Dumbledore, who had crafted half the safety charms in the castle, paused to question the contradiction. Not Hagrid, who had seen what real monsters did in close stone spaces, called out the flaw. The machine of Hogwarts simply moved, and the children moved with it. Harry did not. He walked, yes, but his mind remained in the Great Hall, sifting through what he had heard, what he knew, what did not fit. A troll was in the dungeons. They were going to the dungeons. Either the announcement was wrong, or the plan was. Both could not be true. He lengthened his stride until he was beside Draco, pale and taut in the torchlight. "Malfoy," he said quietly, "if there really is a troll down there, marching first years straight toward it is idiotic." The word landed like a challenge, like a test of whether Draco valued pride over survival. Draco bristled, then hesitated. Harry pressed, voice low and precise, offering logic wrapped in flattery. "You're a Malfoy. Your father would never walk blind into a trap when there's a safer route. There's an old side corridor off the main stairs. Filch complained about it on the first night. We send the littlest that way. If there's no troll, we look cautious. If there is, we look clever, and we're still alive. Cunning, not courage, as currency." Draco glanced back at the cluster of wide-eyed first years, at the prefect already shouting. He made a decision. Within moments, under the guise of avoiding a crush in the main passage, Harry and Draco peeled a knot of younger students away, steering them into a narrow, lesser-used corridor that smelled of dust and forgotten charms. No one was watching. No one would write this into the story. Upstairs, the tale bent differently. Without Harry's misplaced Gryffindor impulse, Ron and Hermione were herded with the rest, their argument over a bathroom slight swallowed by fear. When a stray patrol reported movement near the girls' lavatory, it was McGonagall, not children, who reached the tiled threshold first, transfiguring debris into chains, binding grey limbs before the troll could make a grave of porcelain and bone. Neville, shaking but steady, ushered stragglers away, earning a tight nod that never reached the hourglasses. Down below, in the quiet corridor where nothing terrible happened because Harry had refused to walk where he was told, a different kind of legend took root. No house points were awarded. No public praise was spoken. Slytherin's hourglass did not gleam with new emeralds. Instead, there were glances, measuring, and new. A prefect who said nothing but stopped shouting when Harry met his eyes. Draco, who repeated the plan later as if it had been his idea, yet did not forget whose voice had cut through the panic. In this house, saving lives did not buy you applause. It bought you whispers in the dark, a reputation that moved through stone like water, marking you as someone worth following when the next charm failed and the next lie was told. And the castle, ancient and listening, took note that the boy in green and silver had chosen cunning over spectacle and lived. The castle had taken note. So did the children who lived inside it. By May, the Philosopher's Stone was no longer a rumor, but a pressure in the air, a weight in every shadowed corridor. Harry's suspicions, born in a Gryffindor dormitory in another life, grew differently here. They grew in the dungeons, fed by whispers. older Slytherins spoke of staff meetings that ran past midnight, of Snape returning with ash on his sleeves and a look that made even 7th years avert their eyes. Draco repeated half-truths from his father's letters, words like artifact and guard rotation and Dumbledore's latest mistake, each one a shard that cut the story into pieces rather than clarifying the truth. This is important. In Gryffindor, suspicion had been simple. Snape hated him, therefore Snape was guilty. In Slytherin, hatred was expected, almost mundane. What mattered was where Snape went after curfew, why Quirrell's stammer vanished when he thought himself unobserved, why the third-floor corridor hummed with magic like a grave that refused to stay quiet. The trio that formed around that mystery was not the one the school remembered in another timeline. It was Harry, Draco, and a sharp-eyed girl from the shadows of the common room, Daphne, who noticed everything and confessed nothing. Draco brought lineage and leverage, the ability to turn a prefect's threat into a negotiation. Daphne brought silence and precision, the habit of asking, whenever a teacher spoke of danger, who benefited from the warning. Harry brought something stranger, a willingness to believe that the rules were a replica of safety, not safety itself. When they slipped past Fluffy and fell into the devil's snare, it was not Ron's panic that filled the air. It was Draco's fury at being dragged into this at all. The plant tightened, cold and deliberate. Harry did not thrash. He remembered a paragraph in an obscure herbology text he had read purely to impress Snape. Remembered ink-stained fingers and the quiet satisfaction of understanding. "Relax," he ordered, voice low, explaining the plant's nature with a calm that felt borrowed from someone older. He cast bluebell flames with careful control, not wild hope. The snare recoiled. They lived because he treated the trap as a problem, not a prophecy. In the chess room, the board arranged itself for slaughter. In another life, Ron would have stepped forward, willing to be broken for the win. Draco refused. Of course he refused. He would not die for Dumbledore's secret, for a stone he had never seen. Not Dumbledore, who had never once set foot in the Slytherin common room, who had never asked what these children feared. Harry, forced to choose, did something new. He bargained with the board, probing its logic, fighting with sacrificial moves he never completed, stretching the game into a brutal stalemate that allowed them to slip through on a technicality. No glorious sacrifice, just survival. And then the final chamber, and Quirrell and the stone heavy in Harry's pocket like a second heart. Here the Slytherin instinct became a weapon. He lied without flinching. He stalled. He let Voldemort's voice wind around him like smoke and feigned the first fragile steps of allegiance, asking what power might feel like, what his parents' grave might mean if he chose the winning side. For a few crucial seconds, the room tilted. The grave was empty in his mind. Loyalty was a charm, not a chain. Quirrell hesitated. Voldemort considered. And in that hesitation lived the possibility that this story might end very differently. It did not. Not yet. But when Harry's skin burned Quirrell to ash and the stone vanished from his hand, another thing vanished too. The certainty on both sides that the boy who lived would ever again be predictable. Because somewhere in the smoke and screaming, Voldemort knew. The child had lied to him and meant it. And the next year, the monster in the walls would not underestimate a boy who could look evil in the face and pretend to nod. The second year opens with a hiss. On the polished floor of the Great Hall, beneath banners that seem suddenly too bright, a conjured snake lifts its head and tastes the air. Harry does not think. He reacts. Mouth open, breath sharp, he speaks in a language that is older than the castle itself, a ribbon of sound that coils around stone and bone and fear. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. This is the thing that nobody knew. But here, in this hall, something else is suddenly stripped bare. The comforting replica of the boy who lived as harmless, as safely sorted, as fundamentally on their side. The snake stills, obeys. The words leave Harry like instinct, like pain. When the echo dies, the silence that replaces it is not confusion, as it was in another story. It is recognition. Slytherin colors are already on his chest. The serpent is already his symbol. This is important. They knew, of course, that Slytherin prized ambition and cunning. They had watched him fly, watched him maneuver teachers and rules with unnerving precision. But Parseltongue is different. Parseltongue is a signature, a seal. The hall inhales as one and, for a heartbeat, sees not a boy but a continuation of a legend that began with Salazar himself. Not Dumbledore, who had warned the school that fear would not be permitted to govern their treatment of any child. Not Hagrid, who had once told stories of dark wizards and their snakes by firelight. Not Sirius, who had howled his hatred of everything Slytherin in a house full of portraits. None of them can stop the way the students lean back from Harry as though the very air around him has turned venomous. In Slytherin House, the reaction fractures along older, sharper lines. Some are exultant. To sit in the same common room as a living echo of Salazar's gift feels like vindication, as if the house itself has been proven right by the castle's own bones. Others are unsettled, watching Harry as one might watch a powerful charm whose limits are unknown. And a quiet subset, the ones who think in contingencies and futures, begin to wonder how such a talent might be steered, bargained with, or very gently threatened. The whispers in Gryffindor and Hufflepuff corridors are distant thunder, hair of Slytherin, monster, snake in Harry's own dormitory. They are closer, whispered in the dark between 4 poster beds. Is he opening the chamber? If he is not, could he be convinced too, if the plan were right, if the purpose were pure enough, if the power could somehow belong to them? Isolation becomes a second skin. Teachers watch him with a new measuring caution. Dumbledore's questions lengthen, circling not only what Harry has seen, but what he might someday choose. Even Draco Malfoy hesitates, caught between awe and dread, worship and the fear of kneeling to a boy who might not stay manageable. And somewhere beneath the pipes and stone, the monster stirs. When the time comes, this Harry will not simply stumble into the chamber as a terrified child chasing a ghost. He will seek it, not only to destroy what sleeps there, but to look upon the raw, coiled magic of Salazar Slytherin and understand what it means that it answered him. He goes down into the earth with his eyes open. This is important. The descent is not a child's wild sprint after a fading friend, but the slow execution of a plan he has rehearsed in his mind a dozen times in the sleepless dark of the Slytherin dormitory. Harry has not come alone, though no one walks beside him. He carries knowledge, a stolen, mildew-scented volume of Slytherin house lore, lifted from the restricted section weeks before the first message appeared on the wall. A half-remembered passage about a crowned serpent beneath the school. a whispered password traded from a 7th year whose grandfather once spoke of a hidden antechamber and a voice that answered in the pipes. The story was dismissed as exaggeration. Harry knew better. The grave of such legends is rarely empty. The chamber opens to him not in a rush of blind terror, but with a measured hiss of Parseltongue that feels like uncovering a buried part of himself. When the statue's mouth yawns and the basilisk uncoils, the air itself seems to recoil. Stone sweats. Water shivers in thin, trembling lines. Every lesson, every duel, every charm he has practiced vanishes beneath the simple animal knowledge that this creature could end him faster than a thought. His first instinct is not to raise the wand. It is to speak. "Stop," he says, in the old sliding language. The word is a command and a plea. The serpent halts, head rearing, eyes shuttered to slits. It tastes the air, and in that suspended second, the chamber becomes a weighing scale. Blood, voice, intent, something in Harry's magic brushes against something in the basilisk's ancient obedience and does not feel entirely foreign. The hesitation is small, but it exists. This is important. Tom Riddle steps forward from the shadows of his own memory, and the grave politeness in his smile cracks. He had expected a boy with a sword, not a Slytherin child speaking to his monster like a fellow servant of their shared founder. Not Dumbledore, who had always framed Harry as a Gryffindor weapon. Not Hagrid, who had always feared the monster and never thought to negotiate. Not Sirius, who had never lived long enough in this version of the story to imagine his godson in green. The tension becomes threefold. Riddle orders. Harry counters. The basilisk listens. Its head swings between them, massive, uncertain, as if the replica of a boy in the diary and the living boy before it are two conflicting commands carved into the same bone. Harry tests the gap. He asks questions Riddle does not want asked. About how long the serpent has slept, about the first voice it ever heard, about whether a master can die and still give orders. The basilisk's tongue flickers, confused, tasting the lie in Riddle's claim to be fully alive. The memory snarls, pushes more magic through the diary, tries to tighten the leash. Somewhere in that struggle, Harry understands that obedience is not absolute. It is a habit, a path. Paths can be turned. The duel that follows is not clean. The phoenix may still come. The sword may still flash. The diary may still be pierced, ink spilling like blood across the wet stone. But before the final scream, Harry wrenches something from Riddle's unravelling shade, a fragmented explanation of how one can bind a soul to an object, how a boy became a vessel without consent. The word Horcrux burns into him like venom. When the chamber falls silent, the basilisk lies dead, but the knowledge does not. It coils around Harry's thoughts as he drags himself and Ginny back toward the light, a secret that will haunt every grave he passes and every choice he makes, long before anyone else learns the truth of what Voldemort did to stay alive. He brings Ginny back from the grave without ever having died himself. This is important, because when a Slytherin boy emerges from the darkness carrying a Weasley in his arms, the story the castle tells about him cannot stay the same, but it does not become simple either. In the immediate aftermath, the facts are clear. Ginny Weasley is alive. The diary is a shredded, leaking corpse of magic on Dumbledore's desk, its ink still seeping like venom from a wound that will not close. Fawkes' feathers drift in the air of the office. The sword lies between them, metal still faintly humming with basilisk death. Dumbledore listens as Harry speaks, and the old man's eyes are not twinkling, they are measuring. He asks not only what Harry did in the chamber, but why he chose to trust the Phoenix, why he chose to stab the diary instead of the girl. Not Dumbledore, who had faced Grindelwald, who had mapped the chamber in theory but never in practice, could quite hide the way his gaze sharpens when Harry mentions the echo of Tom Riddle and the word Horcrux. The grave was empty in the bathroom where Myrtle haunts, but the school does not feel resurrected. On parchment and proclamation. Harry is a hero who followed the monster into the depths and brought back a first year. The prophet will write his name with reluctant admiration, Slytherin colours or not. Yet the corridors remember other images. A boy speaking Parseltongue on dueling platforms. A boy whose house crest is a serpent. A boy seen too often near where the attacks occurred. They whisper that perhaps the heir of Slytherin changed his mind. They wonder, in low voices, if closing the chamber is simply another part of some deeper plan. Within Slytherin, the fracture is sharper. Some stare at the ruined diary, hear the word riddle, and feel as though Harry has destroyed a relic, a dark replica of their founder's will that should have been revered, not slain. Others look at him with a new, cold respect. He faced the basilisk and lived. He commanded a phoenix with nothing but faith. A smaller, quieter faction sees something else, a chance. If the boy who speaks to snakes can also save a Muggle-born sister, then perhaps Slytherin does not have to be a grave for compassion. Perhaps ambition can turn outward instead of down. The Weasleys' gratitude is tangled. Arthur's hands shake when he thanks Harry, voice thick with the knowledge of how close Ginny came to being a body in a white bed. Molly crushes him in an embrace that smells of flower and fear. But Ron stands apart. His little sister was saved by a Slytherin who wears Malfoy's colours and who once, on a train, declined his outstretched hand. The debt tastes like ash. Harry's reputation becomes a paradox, a charm that refuses to resolve. He is the boy who might be the heir, and the boy who sealed the chamber. Suspect and indispensable. And in the shadows beyond Dumbledore's office, something else that calls itself Tom Riddle begins to listen. What will it do with a saviour in Slytherin? The saviour in Slytherin does not have long to wonder what Tom Riddle will do with him. The answer arrives as a headline that should have stayed on the surface, but sinks instead into the dungeons. Sirius Black escapes from Azkaban. The words are whispered first, not read. Passed from older Slytherins who have parents in the ministry, in the Aura office, in places where the story breaks before the prophet ever sets ink to paper. In the green-lit common room, beneath the black lake where shadows of giant squid drift like omens, the name is a fracture line. Some remember him as the cousin who betrayed his blood, the boy who ran from a noble house into the arms of Gryffindor. Others repeat a quieter lesson: he crossed the Dark Lord and did not die quickly. The grave was empty, but his life in Azkaban was a warning. This is important, because in this version of the story, the boy Black is hunting sleeps behind Slytherin's wards. The castle tightens around that fact. Portraits murmur, suits of armour stand straighter. Passwords change with unnerving frequency, and the Slytherin entrance, already a secret in the damp stone, becomes a contested threshold in every security meeting. Not Dumbledore, who had once watched marauders and Slytherins clash in these corridors, trusts the dungeons. Not Snape, who remembers Sirius Black's laughter on the edge of a werewolf's den, can quite breathe until his house is counted at curfew. Snape's possessiveness sharpens. He prowls the common room at odd hours, black robes whispering over the flagstones, eyes cataloguing every face, every absence. Detentions become lectures on vigilance. The Slytherin password becomes a charm he changes himself, by hand, with layers of magic that feel almost like a personal ward against one man. When Harry learns that someone has escaped Azkaban to hunt him, he does not respond with reckless bravado. The lion he never met might have charged. The snake learns to coil. He begins to map. Secretly, methodically, he draws the dungeons on stolen parchment, marking every exit, every staircase that shifts less than others, every tapestry that conceals a side passage. He listens when prefects mutter new passwords. He practices defensive spells in the echoing dark of unused classrooms, wand moving in tight, economical arcs. Stunning charms. Shielding charms, nothing showy, nothing that draws attention. Survival, not spectacle. Draco Malfoy watches all of this and finds a way to turn fear into theatre. In the common room, he leans close and murmurs that not even the Dark Lord's enemies are safe, that a name like Potter paints a target no matter what colours you wear. It earns him nods, a little awe, the illusion of control, but alone, beneath the same green light, Draco traces the cracks in the stone and wonders, if black can breach Azkaban, what is a school? What is a house? What protection is a surname when the world decides you are prey? The year bends around that question. Around the idea of a hunter who once shared a dormitory with Harry's father and a hatred with Harry's head of house. And when the truth comes, when Sirius Black's innocence is dragged out of the past like a body from a river, Harry's reaction will not be simple grief. Slytherin has taught him that information is a weapon. He will want to know who lied and why and how the plan was built that left him ignorant. He will not just mourn the years lost. He will begin to design a life in which he is never fooled again. He does not burst into the shrieking shack on a wave of Gryffindor outrage. He arrives like a shadow. Quiet, prepared, Harry has followed the map, the patterns, the gaps in the story. He has watched Ron dragged below the Whomping Willow, weighed the odds, calculated the routes. In this timeline, the boy who wears green and silver does not come flanked by his loudest friends. Theodore Nott is with him for part of the way, pale and reluctant, wand shaking as roots slam overhead, but Harry sends him back with a single, flat order. Someone must be free to run to Dumbledore if this goes wrong. This is important. The shack smells of dust and old fear. Floorboards groan under his feet like something alive. When the door slams and Sirius Black steps from the darkness, skeletal and wild-eyed, Harry's wand is already up, his stance already chosen. There is no shouted accusation. Only one word, cold and precise. Explain, when Lupin arrives and the truth begins to uncoil, Harry does not rush into belief. He interrogates. He moves like a Slytherin prefect conducting an inquest, not a child meeting a godfather. Every claim is met with a demand for proof, each year of silence tallied like a debt. Why did no one come for him? Not Dumbledore, who had placed him on a muggle doorstep and walked away. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from the wreckage and never checked the cupboard under the stairs. Not Sirius, who had sworn to die for James and Lily and then vanished into Azkaban without a word. He forces Lupin to recount each year. Where were you when I was locked in a cupboard? Where were you when the bars went on my window? The questions land like curses. Lupin's voice frays. Sirius flinches. The grave was empty of comfort for Harry. There had been only the Dursleys, and the silent complicity of the adults who knew more and did nothing. Pettigrew's trembling denials fracture quickly under this kind of scrutiny. Slytherin has trained Harry to watch pupils, breathing, the micro-hesitations of a practiced liar. He notes every flinch when James's name is spoken, every hungry glance at the nearest wand. He sees the way Peter's story rearranges itself to protect only one person, Peter. He knows. Yet knowledge is not absolution. Forgiveness does not come simply because the truth is finally spoken aloud. When Snape bursts in, robes billowing like a storm cloud, the room becomes a powder keg. Harry does not lower his wand. He turns, very slightly, so that he can cover everyone at once. He speaks to Snape of Lily, of promises, of a boy who grew up in a house without love. He lets Snape's hatred of Sirius blaze unchecked, but feeds it just enough doubt to delay the killing blow. Lily was a charms prodigy, he says softly. Would she have wanted this? By the end, Pettigrew is on the floor, whimpering, his replica courage dissolved. Harry stands over him, wand steady, the killing curse an unspoken possibility on his tongue. Survival, Slytherin has whispered all year, sometimes demands ruthless choices. Will he make one now? The question hangs in the air like a curse that has not yet chosen its target. He does not say the words. Not yet. The curse stays caged behind his teeth as the clock in the tower begins to toll. Each chime a reminder that time itself is about to become a weapon. When Dumbledore appears, grave and glittering in the half-light, the story bends. In canon, his instructions are simple: 3 turns, save more than one innocent life. In this timeline, Slytherin has sharpened Harry's instincts. He listens, but he does not merely obey. He asks, what are the limits? What happens if they are seen? What if they choose to save someone else instead? This is important. Dumbledore answers less than he conceals. Not Dumbledore, who had spent a lifetime balancing on the edge of paradox, is going to hand a 13-year-old the full truth of temporal magic. He speaks of rules, of not being seen, of Sirius and Buckbeak and the narrow corridor of what must be done. Harry hears something else beneath the words. There are other possibilities. There is a choice. When the time turner spins, it is not an adventure. It is an operation. Harry insists they do not rush to Hagrid's hut. They watch from the shadows first, mapping movements, counting wands, noting which professors arrive and in what order. Every step is weighed against the fragile politics of a school already whispering that the boy who lived sleeps in the serpent's den. If Slytherin House appears to have manipulated an execution, who will the governors blame? Who will fudge fear? Hermione wants to move quickly, to follow the remembered path. Harry holds her back with a hand on her wrist and a plan on his tongue. They wait for Malfoy's silhouette at the edge of the trees, for McNair's gate, for the moment when the timeline can be bent with the least visible strain. He is not only saving lives, he is protecting his position. He knew, now, that survival is also narrative control. Later, by the lake, the Dementors come. The grave ring of their presence presses frost into his lungs. In another story, Harry's happiest memory is simple: flying with the Gryffindor team, the clean joy of speed and sky. Here, the Patronus rises from something darker. He remembers the first time he realized he could outthink the Dursleys, the quiet, vicious satisfaction of planning his own small rebellions. He remembers the first time Slytherin gave him power, a room that did not hate him, a table that listened when he spoke of strategy instead of bravery. The silver figure that bursts from his wand is not an innocent thing. It is a declaration that his mind, his cunning, his capacity to plan 3 moves ahead are his salvation. Sirius and Buckbeak do not become merely rescued victims. They become assets. A godfather who owes his freedom to a Slytherin boy. A hippogriff who can move unseen across borders when the real war begins. Harry is already thinking in years, not hours. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in his bones he understands what she understood. Every piece you move on the board must serve the endgame. Time travel confirms a hard truth for him. The past can be bent, but never gently. Every life saved is a life chosen over another. Every intervention a quiet sentence passed on someone unseen. As Sirius clings to Buckbeak's feathers and vanishes into the night, Harry stands at the window and counts the people he did not even try to save. He wonders, not for the last time, what it will do to him when the next chance to rewrite fate demands a far bloodier trade. And in a locked office elsewhere in the castle, a different device is ticking, waiting for the moment when someone far older decides that Harry's careful calculations are not nearly ruthless enough. The goblet spits blue-white fire. Then red. Then something darker, as if the magic itself hesitates. The parchment that drifts into Dumbledore's hand does not bear scarlet and gold. It bears the cool, precise green of a serpent's house, the ink cramped by a name the castle has whispered for 3 years. Harry Potter. Hogwarts champion. The grave was empty. This is the thing that nobody in the hall understands as the silence stretches. Not Dumbledore, who had built a careful story around a boy who should have belonged to lions. Not Hagrid, who had always imagined the boy who lived roaring in Gryffindor red. Not Sirius, who had once sworn that no child of James Potter's would ever wear Slytherin silver. Yet here he stands, rising from the Slytherin table, the serpent crest bright against his robes as every conspiracy theory in Britain catches fire at once. An underage Slytherin, chosen by a legendary artifact of impartial magic. What better proof, some will mutter, that dark plans are moving beneath the surface. The first sound is not cheering. It is chairs scraping. Gryffindors stiffen as one. The house that lost him watching the house that claimed him take the spotlight they believe is rightfully theirs. Hufflepuffs glance at Cedric, at their quiet, steady champion, and something old and bitter stirs. Slytherin, the house associated with cheating, has undercut them again. Even at Harry's own table, faces tighten. They knew he was ambitious. They did not know the tournament itself would seem to bend for him. Harry feels all of it like pressure against the skin. He could refuse. He could stand before the school and say the magic is wrong, that he wants no part in a spectacle built on blood and graves and glory. Or he can accept. With a Slytherin's composure, with the smallest curve of the mouth that the prophet will call a smirk and his enemies will call confession. He chooses. This is important. He walks to the front as if this were always the plan, and in that walk he begins to rewrite what a snake can be. Not cowardice, not cruelty. Calculation. His first move is not a boast. It is an offer. Later, in a shadowed corridor that smells of stone and old torch smoke, he finds Cedric Diggory and speaks plainly. Shared clues, divided risks, 2 champions who refuse to be played against each other. Cedric studies him, then nods once. A pact sealed not by charm, but by choice. Krum and Fleur require different approaches. With Krum, Harry speaks the language of strategy and flight paths, asking questions that admit respect rather than awe. With Fleur, he acknowledges what the others ignore, that Vila ancestry is not a trick but a weapon, and he would rather understand it than underestimate it. Teachers, too, become pieces on the board. He lets McGonagall see the fear he will not show his housemates. He lets Snape see the steel. Between them, grudgingly, they arrange extra sessions, silent corrections, subtle protections. None of them want to watch him die in their maze. Because the maze is already being grown deep in the grounds. Hedges thick as ramparts, paths that will shift like a living mind. It will not only test courage, it will test whether Harry has learned the most Slytherin lesson of all, that every alley may yet be a betrayer, and every victory may conceal a trap waiting, patient and perfectly timed at its center. The hedges rise. The ground closes over the paths. The maze becomes a promise and a threat in one living, shifting breath of magic. But before the third task, there are dragons. Harry knows this not because of chance, but because in this story he has learned that chance is a luxury. He trades in certainties, or at least in probabilities sharpened into weapons. It begins with a quiet conversation in a shadowed corridor where Victor Krum waits with his back to the stone, jaw set, eyes harder than the Durmstrang ice he left behind. Harry does not appeal to friendship. He speaks, instead of survival, of how a champion who dies in the first task will never discover who is turning the tournament into a grave with moving walls. This is important. He offers what he has heard from the Slytherin common room, rumors of nesting patterns and temperament, in exchange for what Krum's headmaster has whispered of dragon breeds and their weakest angles. Mutual insurance, he calls it, not cheating, a plan for staying alive. He goes further. A late evening, Snape's office, the air thick with potions and unspoken history. Harry asks carefully what sort of flame a dragon uses, how it behaves against certain shield charms. Not Sirius, who had taught him reckless courage in another life, but Severus Snape, who teaches him that knowledge can be a blade. Snape answers in clipped, disdainful phrases, yet he answers, because a dead champion tells no useful truths. On the day, Harry does not simply fly. He walks into the arena with his wand already tracing a pattern, casting shimmering replicas of himself that dart and scatter, pale phantoms drawing the dragon's rage. He studies the way its head moves, the sluggish blink of the left eye scarred by some older battle. He circles into the blind side, using the firebolt not as a symbol of glory, but as a tool, banking low, then high, then suddenly still, hanging in the air long enough to meet the dragon's gaze. He does not speak Parseltongue, yet there is something in the way he holds that gaze, in the memory of talking to snakes in a cupboard and realizing they were the only creatures who knew he was alive. He projects not fear, but a cold, narrow intent. For a heartbeat, the dragon hesitates. That is all he needs. Under the lake, he refuses ignorance. Days before the second task, he walks the shoreline at dusk, speaking softly to the water. Parseltongue curls at the edges of his English, a sibilant undertow that makes the lake itself seem to listen. Merpeople rise, wary and armed. Harry bows, not as a supplicant, but as one sovereign to another. He does not demand. He negotiates. He speaks of boundaries, of how the tournament treats their village as a stage set rather than a home. He promises, if he survives, to carry their grievances to those who sit in towers and write laws. In return, he asks only that they not hinder him more than the rules require. An old merwitch studies him with clouded eyes and finally inclines her head. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. Here, the water will not be. When he dives on the day itself, the reception is not warm, but it is not murderous. Spears remain lowered. The song that wraps around him is not gentle, yet it is not a threat. He finds the hostages bound in their eerie sleep and pauses, truly pauses, to calculate. Who is worth what? Who will owe which debt? He frees his own, of course. But he also cuts another free, not out of pure selflessness, but because he has watched how the web of relationships is spun. A rescued champion sibling may become an ally. A grateful friend may become a shield. He knows that people are not objects, not replicas to be moved on a board, yet he also knows that every act writes a future obligation. This is important. By the time the third task begins, Harry walks into the maze with his wand and something colder, suspicion honed into method. He has watched the hedges grow, has traced their outer lines from the astronomy tower, committing angles and turns to memory. As the whistle blows and the maze swallows him, he begins to mark. A scorched X low on the hedge where a curse lashed out. A faint, near-invisible charm on a stone that hums when he passes again, telling him the path is safe. He moves like a cartographer in hostile territory, mapping not just where he is, but where others might be forced to go. He lays small snares, never lethal, but delaying. A patch of ground turns slick as ice where Kroom's heavy boots might falter. A whispering charm that lures a distant screeching creature toward another champion's light. He does not want their blood on his hands, he simply wants their feet a few minutes slower. And always, as he turns each corner, he asks the silent question: who is moving the pieces outside these walls? Not Dumbledore, who had claimed the tournament was bound by ancient magic. Not Hagrid, who had shown him the dragons with a guilty tenderness. Someone else. Someone who understands that a maze is not only a test, it is a script. Harry intends, this time, to rewrite it before he reaches the center. He reaches the center. The hedges fall away. The world narrows to stone, mist, and a waiting cup that was never a prize. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. Here, the grave is a circle. Harry knows the design before he fully sees it. The chalked runes, the careful symmetry of bone and earth and blood. He has seen replicas of these diagrams in the restricted section, sketched in the margins of a 17th century treatise on resurrection that Snape confiscated and then, almost pointedly, returned. This is important. The story those diagrams told was simple. What goes into the circle does not come out the same. The portkey yanks him forward. The graveyard rises around him, cold and close, names like scars on stone. He does not simply feel dread. He recognizes the plan. The tethering lines that will bind a soul to flesh. The cauldron positioned at the ritual heart. The infant thing in Pettigrew's arms that is not a child and not yet a man. Harry knew in that instant that he was stepping into magic designed to erase the boundary between alive and dead. When Voldemort rises from the cauldron, the air itself recoils. Pale skin, red eyes, the wand that shares his core. The serpent language unfurls between them like a banner. Harry understands every hiss. Voldemort studies him, head tilted, and then he laughs, soft and incredulous. So, Dumbledore's champion. In Slytherin green. His voice is almost gentle. "Tell me, boy, when he left you in that house, did he imagine you would sleep beneath Salazar's emblem? How curious that the boy who lived learned ambition in my house while pretending to fight for his." The words cut because they are not entirely false. Not Dumbledore, who had watched him with that searching disappointment each time Harry chose cunning over spectacle. Not Hagrid, who had trusted the lion in him and never looked closely at the snake. Not Sirius, who had raged at the hat's decision as if it were a betrayal of James himself. They had all believed that house sorted soul. Voldemort sees something sharper. He circles Harry, wand loose in his hand, like a tutor appraising a promising but wayward student. "You speak my tongue. You walk my corridors. You read the books your head of house pretends he does not leave where you can find them. Why cling to their notions of light and dark when you could learn the truth of power? The Cruciatus is not the test. The offer is power, tutelage, a place at his side, a perverse mentorship dressed as destiny." Harry staggers, gasping, and lets his knees hit the grave dart. For a heartbeat, he lets his eyes flicker with consideration. He allows the possibility to live on his face. What if? What if he said yes, just long enough to get close enough to end this? This is important. In Slytherin, he has learned that surrender can be a feint, that yielding can be a weapon sharper than defiance. He bows his head just slightly. The Death Eaters murmur. The circle loosens. Voldemort steps nearer, arrogance widening the gap between caution and certainty. Harry lifts his wand. Expelliarmus, the twin spells meet. Red and green collide, and the graveyard shudders as the Priori Incantatem thread binds them. Wand to wand, core to core, house to house. In that burning connection, both of them see it. The shared language, the mirrored ruthlessness, the narrow ledge on which Harry's soul has walked since the hat whispered Slytherin. The light thickens, a golden cage around their locked beams, and Voldemort's smile falters. Just once. Because in this moment he does not see a child of prophecy. He sees a version of himself that chose differently, and could still choose. The echoes begin to form in the light, and the next figure that forces its way out of Voldemort's wand will change everything Harry thinks he knows about who really died that night. The echoes step from the wand like accusations. A graveyard of light in the middle of the living. And when the last figure fades and the portkey tears Harry from the grave's cold air, the story he brings back to Hogwarts is already heavier than his body can bear. In Dumbledore's office, he speaks too fast. The words tumble, the graveyard, the ritual, the knife, the grave was empty where his blood steamed on stone. The circle of masked Death Eaters, the way Voldemort rose, thin and terrible, from the cauldron. He tells them about the chant that bound his blood into the Dark Lord's new flesh, about the wand, about the echoes that walked. This is important. He knows it is important in the way his scar still burns, in the way the magic in the room seems to recoil as he says Voldemort's name aloud. Dumbledore listens. Motionless, grave, the blue eyes do not flinch, do not doubt. But around the room, the Order members shift, glancing at one another over Harry's head as if his words are a volatile charm that might explode if believed too fully. Not Dumbledore, who had always seen a weapon in the boy and a plan in his suffering. But the others? They see a Slytherin telling them that the Dark Lord is alive again. And some quiet. Poisoned part of them asks whether this is warning or invitation. Cornelius Fudge does not bother with such nuance. In the hospital wing, fat face pale, with fear he will not name, he hears Harry's account and seizes on the one detail that lets him escape. Slytherin, a boy raised among those who admire power, who share common rooms and whispered stories with the children of suspected Death Eaters. Fudge's denial acquires a new, vicious edge. Perhaps the boy who lived has been turned. Perhaps this is not a story of survival, but a coordinated attempt, a Slytherin plot to destabilize the Ministry with tales of a resurrected terror. The Daily Prophet obliges. By morning, the headlines drip with insinuation. Slytherin champion craves spotlight? Dark House, Dark Tales. They print photographs of Harry in green and silver, freeze frames of his narrowed eyes and clenched jaw, and let the captions do the rest. If a Gryffindor seeks attention, it is foolish bravery. If a Slytherin does, perhaps he is rehearsing for darker allegiances. The public, who never saw the graveyard, finds it easier to doubt the snake than the mirror. The strain begins to crack what little bridge he has built across houses. Hermione believes him. Of course she does. She has watched him flinch in his sleep, has read enough history to know how often truth is buried for convenience. But she is a Gryffindor prefect now, and the pressure in her tower is relentless. How can she defend a Slytherin whose story even her own head of house will not fully endorse without consequence? Ron fares worse. His jealousy, always a low thrum beneath their friendship, finds new fuel in the prophet's narrative. Harry the Slytherin, Harry the champion, Harry the center of every grave rumor, while Ron is once again a shadow at the edge of someone else's legend. House prejudice does the rest. When his brothers mutter that you can never entirely trust a snake, Ron does not argue as hard as he might have. Harry feels the shift like a temperature drop. Corridors that once merely watched him now whisper. Faces close when he approaches, then open again in loud, performative doubt when he passes. Even in Slytherin, belief is conditional. Some admire the audacity of his story. Others wonder what it would mean if the Dark Lord truly marked one of their own as equal. He stands at a window one night, looking over the dark grounds toward the graveyard he left behind, and understands something new about the war. If the world will not believe a Slytherin boy who lived, then he will have to fight for it in the shadows. He will have to use every ounce of cunning, every quiet corridor, every overlooked charm and half-forbidden piece of magic they already fear in him. The grave was empty. The world is blind. Between those two truths, he begins to sketch a plan that does not ask for permission, only results. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere far from Hogwarts, the ward she built around her son shiver in response, as if they too sense that the battle has shifted from open fields to hidden corridors. What happens when a child trained to seek the light chooses, instead to master the dark corners for the sake of everyone who turned away? Umbridge arrives like a pastel-wrapped verdict. Smiling cats, pink cardigans, a voice sweet as spoiled milk. And for a Slytherin Harry, the insult cuts in a different direction. She does not see a reckless Gryffindor to be scolded. She sees a contamination in her house of choice, a serpent who refuses to crawl in the direction she approves. Her bias is quieter here, more insidious. She praises proper Slytherin values in her speeches, but her eyes linger on Harry with clinical distaste, as if he were a flawed replica of the ideal she wants to cultivate. a half-blood marked by Voldemort's magic, insisting that the grave of Cedric Diggory is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a war. This is important. To Umbridge, he is not just a liar. He is a dangerous anomaly, a Slytherin with a savior complex, and that must be corrected or crushed. When Hermione suggests a defense group, the conversation in this timeline is colder. No excited rush to the 3 broomsticks, no open recruitment. Harry listens, then begins almost automatically to design a plan, rotating meeting places. No fixed schedule. Coded messages embedded in homework, in house notice boards, in the dull announcements Umbridge never truly reads. A smaller circle at first, carefully vetted. Each name weighed against risk like a stone in the hand. He has learned, in green and silver corridors, that trust is a charm you test before you cast it. The first real fracture from canon appears in the membership. Slytherins come. Not many, and never together, but they come. A 7th year whose father attends masked meetings, and whose hands shake when the dark mark on the man's arm burns through his sleeve. A 4th year girl who has watched her older brother boast about muggle baiting and has felt only nausea. A boy who admits without shame that he wants power and who has begun to suspect that real power might lie in surviving Voldemort, not serving him. They do not arrive as friends. They arrive as calculated risks. Gryffindors bristle. Hufflepuffs hesitate, pulled between instinctive loyalty to Harry and old bone-deep suspicion of Slytherin motives. Ravenclaws observe, measuring probabilities and dangers. The room, whatever room it is that week, becomes a crucible of fragile truces. Harry stands at the center, not just a teacher, but something colder, commander and spymaster, listening for lies in every volunteered detail, watching who pairs off to practice, who flinches when someone mentions the Dark Lord by name. Not Dumbledore, who had always believed that unity would grow naturally from shared danger, could have built this particular army. This is an order born in whispers, in occluded glances, in the understanding that some of its members will go home to Death Eaters and must learn to lie convincingly to stay alive. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, and somewhere beyond the castle walls, James and Lily watched their son assemble something Dumbledore never dared. A resistance that understands the enemy because it was forged in the same house. A prototype of a new kind of order that will fight not from the light alone, but from every shadow it has learned to inhabit. Occlumency in this timeline is not introduced as a mysterious discipline, but as an inevitability. 2 Slytherins. 1 battlefield. 1 mind. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, and the boy who slept beneath the castle now carried not only a fragment of Voldemort's soul, but years of practiced concealment learned in the greenlit common room and in a cupboard that no professor had ever seen. From the first lesson, their conflict is different. Snape does not merely despise a Gryffindor echo of James. He is confronted with a Slytherin heir who has already learned to lower his gaze, to smooth his expression, to let insults pass over him like water while he stores every slight for later. This is important. When Snape snarls legilimens, he does not find a mind flung wide open in startled pain. He finds corridors. Doors. Compartments that feel disturbingly deliberate for a 15-year-old. Harry has been building those walls for years. He learned to lock away the hunger of the Dursleys' kitchen, the shame of Dudley's fists, the quiet knowledge that his own housemates would turn on him if he showed weakness. In Slytherin, vulnerability is a liability. So he made his face a charm and his thoughts a grave. Yet occlumency demands more than instinctive hiding. It demands that he choose what to feel and when, that he decide which memories are replicas placed on the surface and which are buried too deep for any intruder to reach. Snape recognizes the potential immediately. A Slytherin Harry is in some ways his ideal student, cunning, disciplined when cornered, capable of cold focus. But every time his spell pierces Harry's defenses and strikes the raw nerve of Sirius, of his parents, of that endless question, "Why was I left alone?" the boy's control shatters. Emotion floods in. The connection to Voldemort flares. Pain becomes a doorway the Dark Lord can exploit. Here lies Snape's true torment. He is arming the son of his rival with a weapon that, fully mastered, could make the boy almost unreadable, even to him. Not Dumbledore, who had placed so much of his plan on prophecy. Not Hagrid, who had carried the infant from the ruins. Not Sirius, who had rotted in Azkaban for a crime he did not commit, ever intended for Harry to become this dangerous. Yet Snape also knows that without occlumency, Voldemort will walk through the boy's mind as through an unlocked house. In one lesson, the balance shifts. Harry, driven by fury after another invasion of his memories, pushes back. For a heartbeat, the spell rebounds. He sees a flash, a younger Snape in threadbare robes at the Slytherin table, eyes hollow with hunger and humiliation, clutching his wand like a lifeline as laughter curls around him. Harry recognizes the posture, the calculation, the decision to survive at any cost. He sees for an instant a twisted mirror of his own path through Slytherin. A story that might have been his if one friendship or one betrayal had broken differently. Snape rips the connection away, breathing hard, and the lesson ends in silence. But something has changed. Harry understands dimly that occlumency is more than a shield against Voldemort. It is the first structured magic that lets him decide which parts of himself remain alive in the light and which are entombed in darkness. The question is no longer whether he can close his mind. It is what he will choose to lock away when the next door opens. And who will be waiting on the other side? The next door is not a memory. It is a vision. Harry wakes in the hospital wing with his scar burning and the image of Sirius on the stone floor of the Department of Mysteries carved into his mind like a curse. This is important. The old Harry would have believed at once. The Slytherin Harry, trained to lock doors in his own head, lies very still and asks the unthinkable question: what if this is a replica, a planted story, a trap built from his longing? Occlumency does not erase fear, it teaches him to examine it. He sorts through impressions as if they are files in a cabinet, the angle of Sirius's wand, the cut of his robes, the way Voldemort's presence brushes the edge of the vision like cold smoke. Something is wrong, but his anger at being used, at being kept in the dark by every adult who ever claimed to care for him, is very real. Not Dumbledore, who had insisted he clear his mind and then left him full of questions. Not Sirius, who had given him a home in words but not in fact. No one has earned blind trust. So he does what Slytherin has been teaching him since first year. He makes a plan. He does not summon a crowd. He summons a unit. Hermione, because there is no version of this war where he walks into the ministry without her mind beside him. Neville, whose quiet determination has hardened since the grave of his parents became a daily pilgrimage. A Slytherin beater from his house team who owes him for silencing a blackmail attempt in third year. The boy's name is Adrian, and he is good with a wand and better with fear. Ginny, because she has already walked once with Tom Riddle's shadow and come back alive. This is important. The Dar is no longer a classroom of hopefuls. It is a small, deniable strike force. In the Department of Mysteries, Harry thinks like a snake in a maze. He taps a faint Lumos mark high on each doorframe, a breadcrumb only he knows to read. He scratches tiny runic arrows into the stone with the tip of his wand, a charm Lily might have admired for its simplicity. He counts steps, listens for echoes, maps the grave, silent corridors in his head. Every few minutes he pauses, weighs retreat against advance, and forces himself to imagine leaving Sirius to die if the pattern proves false. Can he do it? He does not know, but he forces the question to stand. When the Death Eaters come, they come from everywhere at once. Black masks, cold laughter. Promises Harry drops his wand first. The surrender is a lie. He lets them believe what they already think, that students break easily, that a Slytherin boy will bargain for his own skin. While they jeer, he flicks a silent confundus toward the far shelves, sends glass spheres crashing, uses the shattering prophecy voices as cover for a whispered shield. Adrian follows his lead, feigning terror, then turning on the nearest masked figure with a hex designed to maim, not warn. Hermione vanishes their wands in bursts of harmless-looking sparks. Ginny's bat-bogey hex becomes a blinding curtain. They move like a rehearsed deception, each misstep calculated. For a moment, it almost works. And then Sirius is there, real and laughing and reckless, dueling Bellatrix on the edge of the veil. The grave was empty, Harry will think later, but the arch is a kind of grave that does not need a body. A red light, a slow fall, that terrible weightless arc. Occlumency holds for 3 heartbeats, then breaks. He does not scream as long, he does not chase as far. But when the dust settles and the arch is silent, his grief freezes instead of burning. Someone orchestrated this. Someone knew his scar, his temper, his need. Harry walks out of the Department of Mysteries with a single, sharpened resolve. He will find who turned his godfather into bait, and he will make the truth itself answer for it. Prophecies are supposed to bring clarity. They do not. Not for a boy who has spent 5 years in the Slytherin common room learning that every story is a weapon and every omen has an owner. When Dumbledore finally speaks in the shadowed office, Harry listens, but not as a wide-eyed Gryffindor waiting for destiny. He listens like a Slytherin who has seen bait dangled over a stone arch and watched his godfather fall. This is important. He notes the hesitations, the careful order of the words, the way the old man's gaze never quite meets his when he mentions the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. Harry does not accept the prophecy as a sacred relic. He cross-examines it. Who heard it first? Who else knew? How many copies exist, and in whose hands? He presses Dumbledore on the source, on Trelawney's record, on the fact that an entire war seems to have been steered by a sentence uttered in a rented room above a bar. A sentence, he points out quietly, that could have been misheard, misremembered, or deliberately misused. The line falls between them like a drawn blade. Neither can live while the other survives. To the Harry of green and silver, it does not sound like the voice of fate. It sounds like a strategist's conclusion, a cold assessment that 2 rival centers of power cannot coexist indefinitely. It is a zero-sum game, not a holy writ. He hears not doom, but a briefing. One of you will outmaneuver the other. or both will be ground to dust. So he asks the question no one in this office has ever asked aloud. Why him? Why that cupboard? Why those muggles? Why Slytherin? Not Dumbledore, who had claimed to value choice, can quite explain why Harry was left with the Dursleys without safeguards. Why the hats whispered you could be great in Slytherin was allowed to become reality when the headmaster could have intervened. Was this path guided, Harry demands, or merely tolerated because it suited a larger plan? The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but in Harry's mind another emptiness yawns wider. The gap between what Dumbledore chose to say and what he chose to arrange. If his entire life has been the consequence of a single overheard charm of prophecy, then he will not be its passive subject. He will become its editor. From that night, he thinks in contingencies. If he must face Voldemort, then he will choose the timing, the terrain, the witnesses. He will gather leverage, knowledge of Horcruxes, allies who owe him rather than Dumbledore, escape routes layered like wards. If death comes, it will not be a simple sacrifice, it will be a calculated exchange. A move that leaves Voldemort weaker, his followers exposed, his own body perhaps fallen, but his victory embedded in the board. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in Harry the same instinct stirs to treat prophecy as a structure of magic, not a sentence in stone. A framework to be twisted, re-answered, subverted. He does not see himself as a martyr. He sees himself as a player who has finally been shown the rules of a rigged game and intends, with a Slytherin's patience, to win it, no matter how ugly the necessary moves become. He enters 6th year with a different kind of prophecy on his shoulders. Not just the words carved into fate, but the quiet, coiled expectation of an entire house watching to see what their chosen one will make of power when it is finally placed in his hands. Slughorn arrives like a benevolent ghost of Slytherin past, all velvet nostalgia and careful calculation. He does not merely see the boy who lived, he sees a Slytherin who has stood against Dementors, who outwitted a basilisk's legend, who walked out of the grave of the Triwizard Maze still alive when another boy did not. This is important. In Slughorn's eyes, Harry is not an anomaly in green and silver. He is proof that Slytherin cunning can be welded to public heroism, a political replica of what the house might become if it survives this war. The Slug Club is a softer version of the Slytherin common room, lit by candles instead of the green gloom of the lake, but the hierarchy is the same. Bloodlines, influence, potential leverage. Harry watches the seating arrangements, the way Slughorn's gaze lingers on certain surnames, and he understands that this too is a kind of magic, the charm of proximity, the spell of being remembered when laws are written and favors exchanged. He lets himself be courted, but he takes note. Who is here? Who is missing? Who Slughorn pretends not to see? Then there is the book. The Half-Blood Prince's handwriting is not simply neat, it is predatory. Shortcuts that slice through standard methods, tiny corrections that turn safe mixtures into volatile brilliance if mishandled. Harry reads the ink in the margins and recognizes something he has lived for 5 years, Slytherin-style innovation. The refusal to accept that the official story is the whole truth. Stir counterclockwise, then once clockwise with intent. Cut, do not crush. Wait 3 breaths, not 5 minutes. The instructions feel like secret doors hidden inside ordinary walls. He begins to suspect the prince was one of them, a Slytherin whose grave is not in any textbook, whose name was never draped in house banners, whose work has been quietly harvested while the person was forgotten. Not Dumbledore, who had his portraits and his titles. Not Hagrid, who had stories told about him in every corner of the castle. Not Sirius, who had an escape and a fall and a public redemption that never quite arrived. Someone brilliant who lived in the margins and was never invited to the front of the room. So Harry treats the spells like dangerous artifacts. He tests them alone in unused classrooms, layering shields, building countercurses before he ever speaks an incantation aloud. When a hex seems useful but vicious, he pares it down, stripping away the cruelty, offering a sanitized version to the remnants of the Dar as they prepare for a war the adults will not name. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in his wrist, in the precision of his wand movements, that inheritance answers the prince's challenges with quiet, methodical care. The romance of the year is not the one the castle whispers about. Ginny exists at the edge of his vision, warm and real, but the gravitational pull is elsewhere, toward the unseen mind that has turned a battered textbook into a map of another Slytherin's unfinished plan. Whose anger sharpened these instructions? Whose fear hid this brilliance in a school cupboard and walked away? When Harry finally learns the name that matches the ink, it will not feel like meeting a stranger. It will feel like opening a grave that was never marked, and realizing the hand that has been guiding his own was alive all along. The grave was empty. The ink was not. Between Riddle's cramped annotations and the Half-Blood Prince's cold improvements, Harry walks into Dumbledore's memories already primed to see Horcruxes not as legends, but as a working system of magic that someone has tried, refined, and almost perfected. This is important, because when Dumbledore takes him into the cave, when he unfolds gaunt shack and orphanage and ring and diary like a sequence of surgical diagrams, he is not merely telling a story of the past. He is briefing a Slytherin on the mechanics of soul mutilation, and Harry listens with a Slytherin's terrible, disciplined fascination for forbidden knowledge. The green light on the cave water is not only eerie, it is instructional. He takes notes, not the hurried half-legible scrawl of a boy cramming for an exam, but meticulous records that map out what Voldemort chose, when he chose it and why. In the margins he draws quiet lines between the diary and the ring, between the locket and the castle itself. Living memories. Ancestral relics. Objects that anchor a myth. He writes down not only what Horcruxes are, but how they behave under stress, which protections are layered over them, which kinds of magic seem to irritate the soul fragments rather than simply batter the container. He is the boy who once watched Hermione shout Wingardium Leviosa and saw a troll's club become a weapon against itself. Now he applies that same instinct to Voldemort's immortality. Where are the patterns? Why a diary that can possess, a ring that curses, a locket that whispers? Could a charm be designed to unmoor a soul piece without shattering the vessel, to turn the Horcrux against its maker rather than simply destroy it? The moral tension coils tighter with every lesson. Harry is repulsed by the idea of splitting a soul, by the cold arithmetic that accepts murder as the price of remaining alive forever. Yet he cannot deny the strategic brilliance of scattering one's mortality across geography and history. The plan is monstrous. The plan is elegant. Those two truths sit side by side like twin serpents in his chest. Dumbledore sees it. Not Dumbledore, who had once ignored Slytherin cunning in Harry in favor of Gryffindor narrative, but Dumbledore as he is now, watching a boy whose eyes sharpen at the word contingency. He interrupts one evening as Harry is sketching possible counter-charms, hand resting lightly on the parchment, voice very soft. Understanding is necessary, he says, replication is not. There will be no experiments, no harmless replica, no theoretical splitting, no test of how far a soul can bend before it breaks. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in Harry's blood that same creative impulse stirs, hungry to design something new. He folds it back, for now. Yet as they leave the cave memory behind, as the taste of salt and potion and screaming water fades, he cannot stop the final treacherous thought. What if Horcrux logic could be reversed? What if the Dark Lord's greatest protection could be persuaded one by one to abandon him and become the very spell that drags him to his grave? The tower is not the beginning. It is the culmination of a year spent watching from inside the serpent's den. Harry has not been tracking Draco from across a house divide. He has been watching him fall apart from the opposite side of the same fire. This is important. He sees the late-night exits through the stone arch of the Slytherin common room. The way Crabbe and Goyle hover too close, their whispered conversations cut off the instant Harry steps into earshot. He sees the parchment burned in the grate, the ink stains on Draco's cuffs, the tremor in his wand hand when he thinks no one is looking. The grave was empty in the room of requirement where Draco hides his broken machines and half-fixed vanishing cabinets. Harry knows, because he follows, not as Gryffindor prey stalking Slytherin predator, but as something stranger, a fellow Slytherin who recognizes the shape of a doomed plan. When he corners Draco between rows of discarded furniture and replica wardrobes, his voice is low, almost clinical. He offers information about the castle's wards, about Dumbledore's habits. He offers sanctuary, a way to vanish into the labyrinth of magic and oaths that bind the school. He even offers a staged betrayal, a duel that looks lethal and is not, a narrative Voldemort might accept in place of murder. Draco refuses. Of course he does. But the refusal is frayed, not furious. His eyes are redrimmed, his wand shakes. Harry walks away with the terrible understanding that Draco wants to fail and cannot allow himself to. So when the Tower Night comes, Harry is not frozen beneath an invisibility cloak. He is already there when the dark mark blooms over the castle, having shadowed Draco up the spiraling stairs, each step a drumbeat in a story he has been trying to rewrite. Dumbledore stands weakened against the battlements. Draco's wand is raised, his breathing ragged. The wind smells of cold stone and sea. Harry steps out. No cloak, no Petrificus Totalis, only words. He speaks not as a Gryffindor accusing, but as a Slytherin calculating. He lays out the logic. Voldemort does not forgive weakness. Success tonight only postpones Draco's death. Failure with visible resistance might, paradoxically, keep his family alive. He reminds Draco of the cabinet, of the options they sketched in whispers, of the staged betrayal that could still be enacted. He laces empathy through cold strategy, offering Draco a way to live that does not require him to become a killer. When the door bursts open and Snape arrives, the triangle completes itself. Student, former student, head of house. Not Dumbledore, who had always tried to see the best in Slytherin from a distance. Not Hagrid, who had never walked beneath the green and silver banners without suspicion. Not Sirius, who had only ever known Slytherin as the house that broke his family. Snape knows what it means to be bound to this place by vows and shame. His eyes take in everything, Draco's lowered wand, Harry standing between assassin and target, Dumbledore's resigned, almost tender gaze. Oaths tighten around him like chains. The plan demands a death. He raises his wand. The killing curse blooms green against the night. As Dumbledore falls, Harry's last glimpse is not of fear. It is of a flicker of approval, an exhausted recognition that someone had tried honestly to save a Slytherin soul from breaking, and that this, too, might matter in the long war still to come. The castle does not scream when its master falls. It goes quiet. Silence moves faster than any owl. By the time Harry is herded back under stone and torchlight, the story has already broken along the underground currents of Slytherin House. The headmaster is dead, the dark mark split the sky, and their own head of house fired the killing curse. The grave was empty, in a sense. The place Dumbledore occupied in the school's magic is simply gone. This is important. Slytherin has always prided itself on certainty, on having a plan, on knowing which way the wind of power will blow before anyone else can feel the change in the air. Tonight, the wind howls in every direction at once. Some of them, the older students with fathers who sit close to Voldemort's right hand, exchange quick, bright looks that they try and fail to hide. They knew this was coming, they tell themselves. They were prepared. Others are not prepared at all. A second-year girl with Muggle-born cousins stares at the wall as if it might open into a grave. A sixth-year boy whose mother works at the ministry keeps checking his sleeve, as though the dark mark might have appeared there by mistake. Hogwarts is suddenly, vividly, a battlefield in waiting, and Slytherin understands before any other house what it means to be presumed collaborators when the war walks in the front door. Harry stands in the middle of that green-lit chamber and feels all of it like static under his skin. Grief is there, raw and bewildered, fury too, for the manipulation, for the half-truths, for the way Dumbledore had steered his life like a chess piece and then offered him that last tired approval as payment. Not Dumbledore, who had believed in Gryffindor courage as the axis of salvation. This Harry is Slytherin, and his rage does not burn out. It coils, it calculates, and yet, when he climbs the stairs to his dormitory, he is still climbing into a room where boys sleep whose parents wear masks. The air smells of damp stone and polish, of old magic and newer fear. He cannot afford open war here. So he pulls the curtains on his four-poster and practices the oldest charm Slytherin ever taught him, a perfect, convincing replica of indifference. He laughs, sometimes, at the right moments. He nods when someone mutters that the Dark Lord will set things right. He lets Draco talk and watches which names he drops, which ones he avoids. At breakfast, his eyes are hollow. In the common room, they are merely distant. Two different masks. One boy. Then, slowly, he begins to write. A note left in a textbook margin where a half-blood prefect will see it. Not all of us are safe, even here. If you want out when it comes, memorize this route. A chessboard arranged wrong on purpose. A pattern only someone trained to notice threat will read as a map to a hidden passage. A casual remark about room of requirement cupboards to a frightened first year whose brother vanished after refusing the mark. Each message is a test. Each reply, however cautious, is a thread. Harry does not abandon Slytherin. He digs into it. If Hogwarts is going to fall under Voldemort's shadow, then the house already assumed to be his is the only place where resistance can move unseen. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in Harry's blood the same instinct whispers, work in the margins. in the spaces between declared loyalties. Hide the real spell inside the obvious one. One night, long after curfew, he stands alone in the common room. The lake presses its dark weight against the windows, pale shapes drift and vanish like unquiet thoughts. Above him, other houses sleep in towers and dormitories that will be first to burn if the war comes crashing through the gates. Down here, under the water, under the suspicion, there is cover. He looks up into the green-black depths and understands a new, colder truth. If Hogwarts becomes a fortress of the Dark Lord, then Slytherin will be its heart. And if someone wants to break a fortress, where do they strike? At the heart. The next move he chooses will decide whether this house becomes Voldemort's shield, or the hidden blade angled toward his back. He does not stay. The castle is becoming a grave that still pretends to be a school, and Harry will not be buried in it. Dumbledore's plan survives the man himself. The story of the Horcruxes, of fractured soul and anchored death, has already been laid in his hands. This is important. Leaving means abandoning the one place where his green and silver presence might have held the line, might have kept Slytherin from collapsing entirely into fear and fanaticism. He knows that. He leaves anyway. Not Dumbledore, who had always believed in Gryffindor courage as the answer to almost everything. Not Hagrid, who had put a wand in his hand and a key to a vault in his pocket. Not Sirius, who had once offered him a home. None of them ever truly imagined what it would mean for the boy who lived to go to ground as a Slytherin, to take that house's instincts and turn them outward into exile, into war. On the run, he does not simply camp, he vanishes. Names become masks. Harry assumes false identities with a precision that would have impressed even the most fastidious pure-blood patriarch, a half-blood clerk in a minor ministry office for a day, a mute apprentice in a nocturne alley shop for an evening. Each persona is a charm and a shield, a moving replica of a life he does not live, designed to confuse the patterns the Death Eaters are hunting. He builds safe houses instead of tents. A disused boathouse on a Welsh lake layered with stolen ward schemes and one experimental protection Hermione derives from an old note where Lily was a charms prodigy, scribbled in the margin of a borrowed book. A muggle flat above a laundrette in Birmingham, its walls humming with quiet magic that bends notice and memory. They never sleep twice in the same bed. Communication becomes a different kind of rebellion. The Dar is no longer a club. It is a network. Coded letters written in the margins of textbook replicas, ink that only reveals itself when warmed by dragon-hide gloves, messages braided into the very pattern of a student's essay. Some of the most precise reports come from Slytherins who stay, who walk the corridors under Snape's regime and pretend to sneer while counting Carrow patrols. One whispers of a diadem hidden in the castle's forgotten spaces. Another smuggles out a half-burned inventory mentioning a cursed cup and a Gringotts vault. With Ron and Hermione, the fractures are quieter but deeper. His new instinct is to divide, to delegate, to send Hermione into archives and Ron into the fragments of the old order while he follows the snake trail of Voldemort's history. It feels efficient. It feels necessary. It feels like betrayal. How many times can you split a trio before it stops being alive? The hunt becomes a shadow war rather than a desperate flight. Each Horcrux is not stumbled upon, but stalked, cornered, dissected. The boy who walks in darkness now understands that to defeat the greatest Slytherin of all, he must think as the serpent does, only colder and with a different end. The grave was empty. The future will not be. The grave was empty. The future will not be. But before the boy who walks in darkness returns to the castle, Hogwarts itself is being hollowed and refilled with something colder, quieter, and far more calculated. Severus Snape sits in the headmaster's chair, and from Slytherin's vantage the change is both familiar and terrifying. Rules multiply like curses gone feral. Curfew tightens. The Carrows stalk the corridors with wands half raised, and punishments are no longer detentions but demonstrations. This is important. Within the green-draped common room, beneath the lake's dim shifting light, there is an unspoken understanding. Slytherins will comply, or at least appear to. They will not be the ones dragged first to the courtyard. Snape does not say this aloud. He does not need to. They knew him as the head of house, the man who favored sharpness of mind and precision of charm over noisy heroics. Now, as headmaster, his favor is a shield that cuts both ways. He allows the Carrows to believe that Slytherin is loyal territory, a house of heirs and replicas of their parents' politics. In public, he nods when they sneer at Muggleborns. In private, he changes timetables so the most vulnerable students are somewhere else when the Carrows decide to teach. In the lower years, some Slytherins lean eagerly into the new order, others endure. And a few, remembering another Slytherin boy who once defied expectations, begin to resist in ways that do not look like resistance at all. Alecto asks which corridor Neville Longbottom favors for his patrols. A fifth-year Slytherin answers promptly, confidently, and entirely incorrectly, sending her 3 floors away while a smuggled potion shipment passes unhindered. A group assigned to supervise a punishment session forgets to lock a door, leaving a path for first years to escape before curses escalate. Detention rosters are quietly altered so that a half-blood girl with shaking hands is replaced by a pure-blood boy who can take the blows and heal himself later. One student in particular turns Harry's old example into a deliberate plan. Theodore Nott has watched the story of the Slytherin Chosen One unfold from the edges, has seen how Harry used cunning not for domination but for survival, for protection. Now Theo applies that same logic inward. He bargains with prefects, invokes ancient house privileges, and uses his father's stained surname as currency to volunteer for patrols where younger students are most at risk. He hides first years in unused classrooms, teaches them silent shielding charms, and feeds carefully measured information to Neville's underground, which staircase will be blocked, which professor will look away, which night Snape has quietly removed the Carrows from the evening rounds entirely. Snape feels this subterranean movement like a pressure behind the walls. He does not stop it. He cannot openly encourage it either. His war is internal, fought behind his motionless face. He must appear to favor Death Eater families, to protect their children, to honor their fathers' graves. At the same time, he is quietly shielding students those families would discard, a Muggle-born Ravenclaw whose marks are too brilliant to waste. A Hufflepuff boy whose stutter makes him a target. A Slytherin girl whose bloodline is pure but whose terror is visible every time the Carrows enter a room. Not Dumbledore, who had once trusted in open defiance, but Snape, who understands that in this season survival itself is an act of rebellion. When Harry finally steps back into Hogwarts, he will not find a single enemy house waiting in green and silver. He will find a fractured Slytherin, some of whom have been fighting his war in whispers long before the final battle begins. When Harry returns, Hogwarts is not a sanctuary. It is a grave that has refused to lie still. Stone remembers screams, the very air tastes of old magic and newer fear. This is important. He steps through the shattered doors with the serpent on his chest and the scar on his brow, and every house sees a symbol. But Slytherin sees something else. They see the boy who sat in their common room and spoke, in low, dangerous whispers, of a future where their name would not be synonymous with shame. They see the only person in the castle who has ever looked at them and seen more than replicas of their parents' sins. They watch him from the edges of the entrance hall, green and silver clustered like a storm bank. Or because he has walked into death more than once and come back alive. Fear, because the Dark Lord wears their house like a weapon. Desperate hope, because if Harry Potter Slytherin cannot end this, who can? When McGonagall's voice cuts through the chaos, it is iron and grief. Slytherin to the dungeons. Evacuated, removed from the field as if they are already guilty. Not Dumbledore, who had once believed in second chances for every house, but a headmistress who has watched too many children die in colours she trusted. Harry steps between her and the mass of green. His refusal is quiet and absolute. They are not a single choice, he says. They are hundreds. Let them decide. Let the ones who wish to fight stay, and the ones who wish to leave go without being branded cowards. The word hangs in the air like a curse. Cowards, he knows how it has followed them, how it has twisted every story told about their house. McGonagall hesitates. Not Hagrid, who had once carried him from a ruined cottage, but a woman calculating casualties in real time. This is important. She yields not to Harry's name, but to the hard, cold logic in his plan. A fighter who does not believe in the battle is already lost. Slytherin disperses into the shadows as if the castle itself is swallowing them. They take positions in narrow corridors where giants cannot follow, in stairwells that shift on command, in forgotten passageways only they know. They turn their reputation for treachery inward, and for the first time it is Voldemort's forces who learn to fear a whispered promise and a vanished ally. Death Eaters vanish into side passages and do not return. Masks are found later, empty beside stunned bodies bound with serpentine ropes. Harry moves like a general who never wanted an army. He coordinates with Neville and the remnants of the Dar, assigning positions not by house but by strength. Ravenclaws to the high vantage points for precision curses. Hufflepuffs to the choke points where endurance matters more than flair. Slytherins to reconnaissance, to ambush, to the delicate work of breaking enemy lines from within. He makes cold decisions that feel like breaking his own wand in half. Who covers the courtyard? Who holds the bridge? Who delays the giants, knowing the delay is measured in lives? Not Sirius, who had once fought with reckless, laughing courage, but a boy who has learned that sometimes the bravest act is to send someone else into danger and remain behind to bear the knowledge. When the first walls fall, house colors blur in dust and blood. Green and silver lie torn beside red and gold, a mingling of threads in the rubble that does not care for old rivalries. The grave was empty. The stories they were told about each other were never the whole truth. What matters now is who stood when the doors burst open, and who chose to stay when escape was offered. And somewhere beneath the castle, where the deepest stones still remember a founder's voice, a different serpent stirs, waiting for Harry's final descent. The castle holds its breath when Harry understands. Not the castle of stone and banners, but the older fortress of prophecy and blood, of a scar that was never just a scar. In the shattered quiet after Snape's memories, after the story of Lily and the green light and the baby who did not die, the final truth settles over him like ash. He is a Horcrux. To end Voldemort, that piece of soul in his forehead must be destroyed, and there is only one clean way for that to happen. The grave was empty, the boy who lived was always walking toward this moment. This is important. In canon, Harry's decision is framed as simple courage, the Gryffindor answer to an impossible question. Here, in Slytherin Green, it is something colder and more intricate. He does not only feel the terror of death, he calculates around it. The revelation does not shatter him. It rearranges the board. His first instinct is refusal. Some buried serpent in him hisses that there must be another path, another charm, another loophole in the old words of the prophecy. He thinks of how often magic has bent when pressed hard enough. Lily was a charms prodigy, and he is her son. Surely there is a way to unmake a Horcrux without unmaking the vessel. Surely cleverness can outpace fate. So he plans, even as the walls shake. Could he lure Voldemort under the shattered astronomy tower, wrap him in the fiend fire that still remembers the room of requirement? Could he use the Elder Wand's faltering allegiance, make the death meant for him rebound again, this time with the parasite soul as the only casualty? Could someone else stand between him and the curse, a living replica of the sacrificial magic his mother once wielded? Not Dumbledore, who had moved him like a piece across a board and still believed, perhaps, that he would choose the noble square. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from one ruin already. Not Sirius, who had died for him once in a veil of light and shadow. The pattern cannot simply repeat with new bodies in the way. The Slytherin in him lists contingencies, weighs probabilities, searches for an angle. But the boy who has watched friends fall, who has seen what Voldemort does to the defenseless when no one stands in front of them, knows the truth beneath the calculations. Some prices cannot be passed along. Some doors only open to a willing death. When he walks into the forest, it is not as a lamb to slaughter. It is as a strategist executing the final, ruthless move of a very long plan. His hand closes around the resurrection stone, not to cling to life, but to steady his steps toward its end. His last thoughts as the green light blossoms again are not only of his parents and the friends he failed to save. They are of the house that taught him to survive, and of a future in which Slytherin might be remembered not as Voldemort's shadow, but as the serpent that chose, at the end, to strike at its own poison. And somewhere, as he falls, the forest wonders what will rise when the serpent's sacrifice is done. The grave in the forest has not yet been dug. The grave was empty, and instead Harry stands in a place that is no place at all, where the air is white and the light has no source. This is important, because for the first time since the hat whispered Slytherin in his ear, he is somewhere that does not care what colours hang on the walls. The white mist of King's Cross is a shock after years of damp stone and green-tinged torchlight. No dripping ceiling, no serpent-scale shadows, just endless pallor, clean and almost merciless, as if someone has stripped away every banner and every whispered allegiance. Here, the echoing steps are his alone. Here, the story of the boy in green and silver is suspended, and he can see his life without the distortion of house rivalry, without Draco's sneer or Ron's suspicion, without Snape's watching, wounded eyes. Dumbledore is waiting, of course, not Dumbledore, who had watched him from the high table as a strategic piece on a vast board. Not Dumbledore, who had quietly measured what it meant for the prophecy's child to sleep beneath the lake in Slytherin's dormitories. This Dumbledore is barefoot, quiet, and when he speaks, his voice carries something Harry has never heard from him before. Regret, he admits it, the risk. The choice not to interfere when the hat tilted towards Slytherin, when a single word from the headmaster might have shifted the balance. He tells Harry that he hoped that the boy's core decency, that stubborn refusal to abandon the frightened and the weak, would survive even that crucible, that he needed, for the world that would come after the war, someone who understood Slytherin from the inside if the house was ever to be healed. The plan had never been only to end Voldemort. It had been to mend what Voldemort had poisoned. Harry listens, and the questions spill out of him like smoke. Was he always destined to arrive at this pale station? A fragment of soul rattling in his scar like a stone in a grave? Or did each Slytherin decision, each lie told with steady eyes, each alliance forged in shadowed corridors, each calculated risk that balanced one life against many, bend the tracks toward a different version of the same place? If he had worn red and gold, would the magic humming in the rail lines feel any less inevitable? Dumbledore does not let him hide in easy answers. He challenges, gently but without retreat, the myth Harry has built of himself as a Gryffindor soul misplaced, a lion trapped in a serpent's skin. No, the boy who stands here is something more complicated, more dangerous, and more necessary. He is the child who learned to wrap courage in cunning, who let love and ambition occupy the same heartbeat, who could look at a replica of Voldemort's power in the Slytherin common room and choose again and again not to bow. Lily was a charms prodigy, Dumbledore reminds him softly, and she had died, or seemed to die, believing that love could anchor impossible magic. Harry's life in Slytherin has proved something adjacent, that love can inhabit ambition without being devoured by it. This is important because the choice before him is not whether to be a martyr, but whether to accept a role that will outlive the battle. When he decides to go back, it is not simply to walk once more into the killing curse and trust that the Horcrux will die. It is to return as the bridge between worlds that have always pretended they could not touch. He will go back to defeat Voldemort, yes, but also to claim the house that raised him and remake the future it will offer its children. A future in which Slytherin first years do not have to choose, on their first night under the lake, between survival and their souls. The white station fades. The rails hum. Somewhere beyond the mist, a serpent prepares to rise from its own ashes and decide what kind of world its shadow will finally leave behind. The white station dissolves into stone and smoke. The rails become benches. The mist hardens into shattered walls and floating dust. When Harry opens his eyes, he is standing in the ruined Great Hall, and every survivor in Hogwarts is watching the boy who wears Slytherin green face the man who once tried to claim him. The banners hang in tatters above them, colours dulled by ash and spellfire. Gryffindor's lion is scorched, Ravenclaw's eagle is torn, Hufflepuff's badger is stained. Only Slytherin's serpent, ripped and half-burned, still moves in the draught, as if the house itself is drawing breath. This is important. Because the story that is about to end began, for so many in this room, with a single whispered warning, there has never been a wizard who went bad who was not in Slytherin. Harry steps forward in battle-torn Slytherin robes, silver thread darkened by blood and dust, the green so close to black it looks like mourning. He looks like a ghost walking out of his own grave, the living contradiction of every whispered prejudice. Not Dumbledore, who had once feared what Slytherin might make of him. Not Hagrid, who had told him all Slytherins were the same. Not Sirius, who had spat the word like a curse. None of them are here to see what that house has actually forged. Voldemort raises the Elder Wand, thin lips curving, still convinced that possession is power. Harry's voice cuts across the hall, low but carrying, wrapped in the kind of quiet that makes wands falter in mid-air. He names the wand, names its history, names its murders. Then he names its flaw. The grave was empty, he says, and the words are not about a burial plot in Godric's Hollow, but about allegiance itself. The grave of fear. The grave of blind obedience. The grave where Voldemort believed loyalty was something you carved into flesh with a brand, not something freely given. Harry explains, with the patience of someone who has waited 7 years for this moment, that the wand does not serve the hand that stole it from a tomb, but the wizard who mastered its last true owner. He does not stop at the technicality. He tells Voldemort that he has never understood why Draco lowered his wand on the astronomy tower, why Snape's killing curse was not the victory he imagined, why a boy who should have been his perfect Slytherin heir chose chains and danger over easy safety. Voldemort does not understand choice. He understands only chains. Then Harry turns, not to his friends, but to the Death Eaters. His offer is cold, almost clinical. Drop your wands and live long enough to stand before the Wizengamot. Keep them and die for a master whose wand has already abandoned him. He does not dress it as mercy, he frames it as arithmetic. A final calculation of self-interest that even the most hardened Slytherin can understand. A few wands clatter to the stones, others tremble. When the last duel begins, Harry is not gambling on love alone. He is counting on everything he has learned, that the Horcrux inside him is gone, that the Elder Wand will not kill its true master, that Voldemort's arrogance will make him choose the killing curse again, because he cannot imagine any other ending. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in Harry's stance, in the subtle way he angles his borrowed wand, there is the echo of her precision and James's reckless aim, refined into something colder, sharper, more deliberate. Green meets green. Avada Kedavra against Expelliarmus, but this time the disarming spell is not Knave. It is a scalpel aimed at the single weak point in a fortress of dark magic. The Elder Wand revolts, the curse recoils. Voldemort dies not in a blaze of triumphant horror, but as a man whose own weapon refuses him, his body falling like a discarded replica of the terror he once was. In that instant, Slytherin ambition is inverted. The boy the Hat almost sent to the dungeons uses cunning, calculation, and compassion to unmake the darkest version of himself. The hall exhales, but Harry is already looking past the falling body, past the drifting ash, toward the watching Slytherins whose futures have just been torn open. Because the duel is over. But the question of what a house does with its freedom has only begun. The duel is over. The castle is burning. The banners are torn and blackened, and in the stunned, smoky silence that follows Voldemort's fall, a quieter question rises like dust from the stones. What do you do with a house that has served 2 Dark Lords? The Ministry's first instinct is simple. Destructive, the plan, whispered in back rooms and shouted in the atrium, is to dismantle Slytherin outright, to scatter its children into other houses, to salt the ground where its common room lies beneath the lake as if it were a grave that must never be opened again. This is important. Officials stand before reporters and speak of root causes and breeding grounds, and everyone knows which colors they mean. But the backlash comes quickly. Former Slytherins, some marked, some clean, some who fought and bled on the right side of the war, send letters, call in favors, threaten to expose old ministry compromises if their house is erased. Parents who lost sons and daughters in green and silver demand to know why their dead should be rewritten as villains by category. Not Dumbledore, who had once warned that sorting children too young carved prejudices into stone. But other surviving elders rise to say that to kill a house is to admit the institution was never more than a mask. Into this argument steps the boy who killed Voldemort, a Slytherin in scorched robes, the snake still stitched over his heart. Harry stands in a crowded Wizengamot chamber and says very quietly that ambition did not make Tom Riddle a monster, any more than courage made every Gryffindor a saint. He speaks of nights in the Slytherin dormitory learning to listen more than he spoke, of bargaining with Snape, of turning suspicion into strategy. The war was not won in spite of his Slytherin traits. It was won because he learned to wield them without becoming a replica of the man who gave him his scar. The grave was empty where Slytherin's reputation used to lie. That is the unsettling truth. The story had always been easier when evil lived in one house and good in another. Now the ministry has to admit that the boy they parade as their savior learned cunning from the dungeons, not the tower. At Hogwarts, McGonagall walks the ruined corridors and weighs a different question. Who will own Slytherin now that Snape is gone and the Dark Lord is dust? She considers Slughorn with his soft voice and harder calculations, wondering if his fondness for famous names can be turned into a model of gentler ambition. She considers, more dangerously, a reformed former student, someone who wore the mark and turned back. Could the house bear that kind of mirror? Younger Slytherins watch all this with an unsettled awe. They grew up idolizing the Dark Lord, tracing his initials in the margins of textbooks, whispering about bloodlines in the flicker of greenish torches. Now the greatest hero of their age wears their colors, speaks their language of plans and contingencies, and refuses to let anyone call them inherently corrupt. Their certainty fractures. If Harry Potter is a Slytherin, what does that make them? Lily was a charms prodigy, but even she could not have designed magic to fix a house's soul. No one can. The battle for Slytherin does not end on the night Voldemort falls. It begins there, in the arguments, in the appointments, in the quiet choices made in a half-flooded common room under the lake. And as the years stretch forward, everyone understands a final, unsettling possibility. Slytherin will change because of Harry Potter. The only unanswered question is whether it will change into something cleaner or simply learn to hide its darkness better behind the face of its most famous son, who is, impossibly, still alive. Slytherin will change because of Harry Potter. That much the castle understands. The harder question is what happens to Harry once the war is over and the banners have been taken down from the Great Hall. In this timeline, the boy who grew up learning that survival requires secrecy does not easily become a public symbol. He could. The ministry would gladly polish his image, set him behind a podium, turn his scar and his house into a living emblem that ambition can be redeemed. But Harry has lived as a weapon and a warning. Does he truly want to live as a monument? There is a version of him who becomes an aura, of course, but not the open, reckless Gryffindor version. This Harry is a strategist in dragonhide gloves, the quiet voice in the briefing room who sees the pattern no one else sees. Not Dumbledore, who had once moved pieces across a board of children and prophecy. Harry studies that grave sort of leadership and chooses something colder, sharper, targeted strikes, preventative arrests, a plan for dismantling the remnants of Voldemort's network before they can grow new heads. There is another path where he returns to Hogwarts, to the place that first taught him both cruelty and belonging. The defense against the dark arts classroom suits him too well. He knows every curse in the textbook and too many that are not. Students whisper that their professor dueled the Dark Lord and survived. He does not correct them. Instead, he shows them the cost of every spell. This is important. When he walks the damp stones down to the Slytherin common room as head of house, the green light on the lake turns his scar into a pale, thin crescent. He is living proof that Slytherin can produce protectors as well as monsters, and he uses his own story like a blade against the old blood purity myths. Yet there is also a Harry who steps away, who has stood in too many corridors that smell of smoke and stone dust, who cannot bear another memorial. This Harry buys a small cottage near a forgotten graveyard where the stones are so weathered the names have become a kind of silence. He marries Ginny, perhaps, or another partner who understands that his quiet is not indifference, but scar tissue. Someone who can hold his darker edges without trying to sand them down. Draco visits sometimes, walking the overgrown path like a man approaching a confession. They are wary allies, then uneasy friends, bound by the knowledge that they both stood close enough to Voldemort to feel the temperature of his magic. They speak of policy, of Slytherin, of children growing up in a world that only half understands what almost happened. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. The prophecy could have broken a different way. They both know how thin the margin was between their lives and ruin. Harry writes letters to certain Slytherin students, the ones who remind him too much of himself at 11. He does not sign them with his full name. They know anyway. Lily was a charms prodigy, and Harry adapts one of her subtler inventions into a protective charm woven into the parchment itself, a replica of the old sacrificial intent turned toward guidance instead of shields. In every version, his relationships rearrange around the same hard nucleus of experience, with Ginny or another who can meet his gaze without flinching from what he has done, with Draco, who learns that apology is a practice, not a single act. With Snape's memory, which becomes an inheritance of methods rather than morals, use the mask but never forget it is a mask. His legacy, in the end, is not only the night he faced Voldemort beneath the shattered roof of the castle. It is the ministry regulations he quietly helps draft or refuses to touch, the reforms to house sorting he champions, or the old rituals he leaves undisturbed. It is whether Slytherin becomes a crucible for disciplined ambition or a more elegant camouflage for cruelty. This is important, because the story future generations tell about power will not rest solely on a battlefield. It will live in the systems he either rebuilds with his own scarred hands or walks away from, leaving the truth of what he could have done hanging in the air like an unanswered spell. Power, once taken, demands an answer. What did it cost him to wear green and silver and still walk into the final battle on the right side of the grave? The moments that defined this Slytherin Harry were not the loud ones. They were the quiet calculations, the places where cunning bent the path of fate by a single degree. In the chamber, he did not simply charge the basilisk with a sword and blind courage. He spoke to it, parcel-tongue uncoiled like a slow coal charm as he bargained for Ginny's life, offering the serpent a way to live if it turned on the diary that had enslaved it. The stone ceiling dripped, the air tasted of venom and old magic, and the boy who lived because of a plan learned that monsters could be negotiated with, if one was willing to speak their language. Years later, in the Department of Mysteries, that lesson returned sharpened. He did not merely rush into an ambush, he walked into a board he had already studied. He lied in measured tones, fed the Death Eaters fragments of prophecy, turned their suspicions against one another, using their hunger for Voldemort's favor as a blade. Not Dumbledore, who had always preferred the clean righteousness of open confrontation, would have approved of every word. But the shelves still shattered, the glass still fell like rain, and some of the order still died. Victory came wrapped in the sound of breaking replicas of futures that would never be. On the last night, when the castle burned and the dead lay in rows like punctuation marks in a story written in blood, he stood before the surviving Death Eaters and did something almost no Slytherin of legend had done. He offered them a way out. Surrender, live, testify. He used their fear of Azkaban, their exhaustion, their private doubts as leverage. This is important. He weaponized mercy, but he did not abandon it. Because there were lines he refused to cross even when the war ground those lines thin. He studied Horcruxes with a scholar's horror and a Slytherin's fascination, but he never split his own soul. He learned the unforgivable curses, felt the way the magic wanted to settle into his bones, and still used them rarely. Each casting an event he would revisit in sleepless nights like a grave he had dug himself. He never once entertained blood purity as anything but a lie that murdered children. Slytherin did not make him gentler, it made him fluent in grey. He lied to protect those who would have hated him for the lie. He chose strategic retreats that cost lives now to save more later. And he knew exactly what he was doing each time he walked away. Not Hagrid, who had always believed that goodness was simple, could have borne that arithmetic. And so he is more haunted. He remembers the basilisk's hesitation, the Death Eater's flickering eyes in the Department of Mysteries, the single masked man who lowered his wand and lived because Harry offered surrender. He remembers, too, the ones who refused and died, and the knowledge that he had calculated for that outcome. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but he carries a cemetery inside him. Slytherin did not make him evil. It made him honest about what winning required. That honesty is the steel in his spine and the weight on his tongue whenever he speaks of the war. Lily was a charms prodigy, and her son became a strategist of human hearts, seeing every fault line, every price. The question is not whether he fell. The question is what he does, now that he knows exactly how far he was willing to go and how close he came to going further. He is not the only one who changes. When the hat turns left instead of right, when green and silver claim the boy the world expected to wear a lion, the shockwave does not stop at the Slytherin table. This is important. Ron Weasley does not sit opposite Harry Potter in a rattling train compartment. He does not win instant significance as the best friend of the boy who lived. In this story, he walks into Gryffindor Tower with only his brother's shadows for company and a bed that feels too large for how small he believes himself to be. Without Harry's reckless loyalty to drag him into danger and then praise him after, Ron's insecurities do not evaporate in troll clubs and giant chessboards. They deepen. Or, in some nights, they harden into something else. Because someone still has to fill the empty space by the fire. Someone still has to lead. In the absence of a famous first year, Ron is pushed forward earlier. Captain not of a war yet, but of homework groups, Quidditch debates, the tiny rebellions that define a house. He argues more with Percy, resents more of Fred and George's easy brilliance. His friendship with Hermione is slower, pricklier, less balanced by Harry's instinctive peacemaking. They bicker, they compete, and when they finally stand side by side, it is as two sharp edges, not one edge and one cushion. Hermione Granger still reads every book, she still masters every charm. But without the bathroom troll and the boy who chooses her over popularity, her first great lesson is not that rules can be broken for love. It is that rules, if wielded correctly, are power. She joins every sanctioned club. She writes letters to professors about curriculum. She learns the ministry's structure before she learns how to fly. The grave of her childhood idealism is dug more neatly, with parchment and ink instead of fire and fear. By fourth year, she is the one quoting regulations to McGonagall, proposing formal student councils, believing that if the right people simply knew the truth, they would act. Not Dumbledore, who had watched too many councils fail, but Hermione, who still trusts procedure, becomes the youngest advocate for reform that no one quite takes seriously. Not yet. In the dungeons, Draco Malfoy meets a Harry who shares his house but not his certainty. The mirror he thought he wanted does not smile back. It questions. It calculates. It knows the cost of loyalty because it has already weighed James and Lily against the world, even if it does not remember why. Standing beside a Slytherin Harry, Draco is no longer the undisputed prince of the house, he is the boy constantly measured against a living contradiction. This is the pattern interrupt. In canon, Draco's cruelty escalates in the safety of a like-minded echo chamber. Here, every slur, every threat lands in front of a boy who carries the Dark Lord's mark in his scar and yet refuses to kneel. Either Draco doubles down, racing to prove himself the truer heir of that ideology, or the dissonance fractures him early. He becomes the one who laughs loudly in public and stares too long at the floor in private. The would-be Death Eater, who cannot quite silence the memory of Harry's quiet question, "Why are you so sure?" Neville Longbottom, meanwhile, does not have Harry to hide behind in Gryffindor. The Sorting Hat's almost choice for him, the bravery it whispered, has more room to breathe. Without the gravitational pull of the boy who lived, the house looks elsewhere when it needs a symbol, and finds a boy with shaking hands who keeps standing up anyway. The first time he blocks the portrait hole against his own friends, he does not do it for Harry. He does it because someone must. Each of these lives bends around the absence of a lion-shaped center. Ron's jealousy becomes either leadership or bitterness. Hermione's brilliance becomes either compassionate rebellion or cold bureaucracy. Draco's arrogance becomes either fanaticism or fragile espionage. Neville's fear becomes either retreat or the early face of resistance. The boy who organizes secret dueling practice years before the Carrows ever arrive. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, and that absence rewrote one war. Here, an empty chair at the Gryffindor table rewrites another. One change sorting is not a single deviation. It is a branching forest of destinies, each side character stepping almost unwillingly into a protagonist's place. And somewhere beneath the castle, in a common room lit by green light on black water, Harry watches them all from the other side of the chessboard, knowing that every move he makes shifts lives he never fully sees. Voldemort adjusts. He always has. But when the boy who lived walks down to the dungeons and takes his first breath of greenlit air as a Slytherin, the Dark Lord does not merely adjust. He rewrites his war. At first, he sees an opportunity. A child marked by his own magic, bearing his own wandcore, now draped in the colors of his ancestral house. In his mind, Harry is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a resource to be claimed. A living replica of his younger self that might yet be corrected. This is important. The prophecy becomes, in Voldemort's private retelling, not a sentence of mutual destruction, but a recruitment script. The boy who has the power to vanquish him might instead kneel, if approached with the right mixture of fear, flattery, and carefully staged revelation. So his plan bends. Less emphasis on simple murder, more on seduction. Possession of Quirrell is no longer just a means to reach the stone, it becomes a test of Harry's pliability, a whispered campaign in corridors and classrooms. Harry is framed, in rumors seeded by masked voices, as a confused young Slytherin who will eventually see the Dark Lord's wisdom once Dumbledore's lies fall away. Not Dumbledore, who had once believed Slytherin House could be redeemed through patient guidance, not even he anticipates how precisely Voldemort will aim his narrative at the fractures in a snake pit of children. Targeted violence follows. When attacks begin to fall disproportionately on Slytherin students who speak against blood purity, it is not random cruelty, it is leverage. Each cursed child, each petrified body in the hospital wing is a message: choose the Dark Lord or watch your own house die. Harry is forced into impossible calculations, weighing which classmates to protect, which alliances to feign, which truths to bury alive. The grave was empty, but now every corridor feels like one. Inside the House of the Snake, the effect is corrosive and strange. Younger Slytherins grow up torn between the myth of Voldemort and the living presence of Harry, who carries the same serpent on his chest, yet refuses to bow. Some idolize him as a new kind of leader, others fear that standing near him paints a target on their backs. Death Eater recruitment becomes unstable. There are more defections, more reluctant pledges, more double agents who wear green ties by day and pass messages to the Order by night. Not Hagrid, who had once carried Harry from the ruins, not Sirius, who had once dreamed of pranks and Quidditch, could have imagined that the most dangerous battlefield would be a common room by the lake. Voldemort, convinced he understands Gryffindor rashness, misreads Slytherin calculation again and again. In the graveyard, he expects a boy who will either charge or cower. Instead, he faces a duelist who has mapped exit vectors, wand priorities, and the psychology of his followers, turning their fear of failure against them. In the Department of Mysteries, he anticipates reckless heroism. Harry gives him misdirection decoys and a plan built on the prophecy's ambiguity, using his friends like chess pieces but never like sacrifices. By the final duel, Voldemort still assumes that love makes one foolish. He never learns that love, filtered through ambition and cunning, becomes strategy. This is his blind spot. Not house loyalty, not even blood. He cannot conceive of someone using Slytherin traits in service of protection rather than domination. Of a boy who stands in green and silver and chooses again and again to place his own heart in the line of fire, and that failure more than any wand is what kills him. Because in this story, the snake does not devour the lion. It guards the gate. In the end, the colors on Harry's tie do not change the shape of his soul. Green or red, lion or serpent, he still walks into the forest. He still offers his life to stop a war. This is important. Canon Gryffindor Harry charges forward, wand lowered, trusting that love and luck and some half-understood ancient magic will catch him when he falls. Slytherin Harry walks the same path with a different gait, weighing contingencies, choosing the moment of surrender as carefully as any battle plan. Yet the grave he is willing to occupy is the same grave. The difference is not courage. The difference is choreography. Both boys face Voldemort in their first year, both stand between the stone and annihilation. Both cling to friends with a ferocity that borders on desperate, whether those friends wear red and gold or green and silver. Both choose, again and again, to step into the line of fire. The story refuses to let bravery be house-locked. It reveals that the hat saw the same steel and simply offered two different ways of tempering it. Without Harry, Gryffindor shifts. A tower that once revolved around one reckless, beloved center must find another axis or fracture. Perhaps Neville, without Harry's shadow, grows into quiet command, turning the common room into a refuge where fear is spoken aloud and faced together. Perhaps instead, the house turns inward, its boldness curdling into a kind of performative daring, a closed circle of legends and Quidditch tales that leaves Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw outside the firelight. In one future, inter-house relations soften as a humbler Gryffindor reaches outward. In another, the absence of the boy who lived hardens old rivalries into stone. Slytherin, with Harry alive at its heart, becomes something else entirely. A house that had been a graveyard of wasted brilliance and inherited prejudice begins to watch a different kind of leader. This boy uses cunning to shield first years from cursed corridors. Ambition to map the chamber not for conquest but for evacuation routes. Strategy to keep his friends away from the Dark Lord's recruiters. When the most famous Slytherin of the age stands in front of curses instead of behind them, younger students learn that their traits are tools, not sentences. The replica role models of Dark Lords and Blood Purists are displaced by something unsettlingly new, a protector in green. Lily was a charms prodigy, and she knew that magic works through focus. The houses are like that, lenses, not cages. Gryffindor sharpens courage until it can cut through terror. Slytherin sharpens ambition until it can pierce impossibility. Ravenclaw sharpens intellect, Hufflepuff sharpens loyalty, and then each witch and wizard must decide where to point the blade. Not Dumbledore, who had preached unity from a staff-carved podium, truly understood how dangerous a sharpened virtue could be in the wrong direction. The grave was empty. The real burial, in this what if, is of the easy story that green means cowardice and red means nobility. The magic of this alternate timeline is not merely that Harry changes houses, but that the houses themselves begin to move, to flex, to show what they might have been if anyone had ever demanded more of them. And as the war tightens, as the corridors darken and old plans fail, one question waits in the shadows of the castle. When the final choice comes, which sharpened trait will cut deepest? When the final choice comes, which sharpened trait will cut deepest? For Harry, the answer is not a moment on a battlefield, but a long, slow incision through the center of his identity. The boy who lived wears green and silver. The savior of the wizarding world sleeps beneath a ceiling carved with serpents. From first year onward, he lives in two incompatible stories at once. In one, he is Lily and James's son, the child who should have belonged beneath scarlet banners, who should have laughed by the fire with Ron and Hermione, who should have heard his parents praised as brave, uncomplicated martyrs. In the other, he is the Slytherin student who shares a dormitory with the sons of Death Eaters, who learns to move through whispers and half-truths, whose very common room feels like a grave for the boy he might have been. This is important. The divided life is not just external. It is internal, intimate, and merciless. Every time a parent pulls their child closer in Diagon Alley when they see his green-trimmed robes, every time a professor pauses a fraction of a second too long before praising him, the doubt deepens. If the hat saw Slytherin in him, if the phoenix feather in his wand also lives in Voldemort, if he speaks Parseltongue with unnatural ease, what does that say about the truth of who he is? There are nights after the Chamber of Secrets when he stares at his reflection and tests himself. He imagines, deliberately, what he would sacrifice to save a friend or to win a war. He hears himself think, coldly, that one life might be an acceptable cost for 100. The thought horrifies him. The thought also makes sense. That is the part that keeps him awake. Not Dumbledore, who had once warned him about the perils of choosing what is easy over what is right, understands how that warning sounds to a boy who has already chosen the snake. Not Hagrid, who had muttered that there was not a witch or wizard who went bad who was not in Slytherin. Knows how those words echo years later when Harry proposes a ruthless plan and sees his friends flinch. His relationships warp around this tension. Ginny, or another partner in a different branch of this story, must learn to love not only his courage but his relentless pragmatism. The way he can discuss luring Death Eaters into a trap with the same flat calm as planning a Quidditch practice. Hermione trusts his mind, but sometimes fears his solutions. Younger Slytherins idolize him for the wrong reasons, whispering that he proved cunning is the highest magic because he won by outthinking everyone, not by being kinder. The pattern breaks one winter after the war, when he finally walks into a healer's office in St. Mungo's and says the word trauma aloud. There are magical equivalents of therapy, pensive work to revisit memories with guidance, legitimacy carefully constrained by charm and contract, slow rituals that teach the body it is allowed to stand down from constant vigilance. Courage carried him through the war. It cannot, by itself, teach him how to live while alive. Years later, as an aura or a reformer of Hogwarts, depending on which plan he finally chooses, he passes the blank stretch of stone that conceals the Slytherin common room. Laughter filters faintly through the rock, young voices rising and falling over some private joke. He feels pride because the house did not remain what it was, because he did not let it, and he feels something else, quieter and more enduring, an unease that never quite dissolves, as if somewhere behind that wall a boy in green is still deciding what kind of man he is allowed to become. The grave was empty. The house lived on. And Harry walks between those truths, carrying the weight of the snake like a second scar no one can see. The grave was empty in another sense as well. The moment the Sorting Hat whispered Slytherin instead of Gryffindor, the familiar story we thought we knew was quietly buried, and something stranger, narrower, more precarious began to breathe in its place. This is important, because that single word did not alter the boy's soul. It altered the angle of every test that soul would face. The magic in his veins was the same. The scar was the same. The phoenix feather in his wand still twinned him to a murderer. But the common room he walked into that first night was lined with green, with watchful eyes that measured advantage before they offered friendship. The hat had not been wrong. It had seen resourcefulness in a cupboard child who learned to go unnoticed, ambition in the way he clung to the idea of belonging at all, a latent hunger to matter after a life spent as a replica of a real boy no one seemed to see. Slytherin did not create those things. It named them. It sharpened them. And in doing so, it forced him to decide, again and again, what those blades would cut. In this darker corridor of possibility, we learn that house does not define destiny. Ambition, turned outward, can serve love as fiercely as courage can. A Slytherin Harry, who lies convincingly to protect Hagrid, who bargains with Snape for the safety of first years, who studies Voldemort not to emulate him but to understand where to break him, proves that wars are not won only by radiant heroes at the front. They are won by those willing to understand their enemies so precisely that mercy and strategy become the same act. Along the way, hidden facets of old figures catch the light. Draco, offered something other than contempt and competition, becomes a possible ally, his cruelty no longer inevitable but contingent. A boy testing which future will have him. Snape, bound to a child who bears Lily's eyes and Slytherin's crest, is a more tragic mentor, dragged daily between hatred and a reluctant, corrosive respect. Not Dumbledore, who had always believed the house system could be bent toward the greater good, walks a finer edge, having gambled with a child's placement and now forced to watch that gamble think for itself. There is a kind of tragic awe in watching this Harry walk a narrower, darker path without falling. Every calculated choice has a cost. Every secret meeting in the shadows, every deliberate alliance with someone half turned toward the grave stains him even as it saves others. He becomes the boy who survives not only killing curses, but the slow erosion that comes from always being the one who knows too much and speaks too little. And so we are left with two Harrys walking side by side in memory, the lion and the serpent. The boy in red who charges, and the boy in green who plans. Our environments shape us. The dungeon walls and the tower dormitories whisper different stories into sleeping ears. But the truth that endures is quieter. It lives in repeated choices, especially the ones made when no one is watching, when there is no applause, when the only witness is the self he is afraid to become. Carry this Slytherin Harry with you. Let him stand beside the cannon boy whenever you think about courage or loyalty or what it means to be alive in a world that keeps asking for more than you can bear. Ask, when the hat settles over any child's head, in fiction or in life, is it the sorting that matters or what they choose to do with the parts of themselves it merely names? Carry him with you, and then set him down beside yourself. The hat's brim lowers, the hall holds its breath, and this time it is not Harry's name echoing in your ears, but your own. The voice in the dark whispers, Slytherin. You feel the word like a weight, like a key. Do you accept it? Do you argue? Do you ask very quietly what it saw in you? This is important. because the answer you give that voice is not really about green or red, snake or lion. It is about what you believe your ambition is for, what you think your fear is protecting, what you hope your love might someday be strong enough to do. After walking through a world where the boy who lived sat beneath the lake instead of in the tower, has your answer changed? Would you still beg for Gryffindor, or would you ask the hat to show you what could be redeemed in Slytherin instead? Imagine for a moment that it is you the hat sends to the dungeons. The troll comes, the stone is threatened, the chamber wakes. How does your plan unfold now that the common room is lit in green? Do you slip through shadows instead of corridors? Trade open heroics for quiet leverage, use a subtle charm instead of a shouted spell. Tell the story in the comments as if you were there. Describe the night you chose to face the troll from beneath a disillusionment, or the day you opened the chamber not to prove yourself, but to end the grave under the school once and for all. Do not stop at cool AU. Rewrite the year. Rewrite every year. How would a Slytherin Harry protect the stone without ever being caught? How would he stalk the basilisk with mirrors and misinformation? How would he meet Sirius on the tower or walk into the Triwizard Maze when cunning and calculation are no longer flaws to overcome, but tools he has finally accepted as his own? And as you trace those threads, ask which altered arc cut deepest. Ron, left in a tower that feels suddenly too large, still loyal to a friend who never joined his table. Draco, finding the boy who lived at his side and realizing that admiration and envy are no longer safely separate. Hermione, standing between houses, building a different trio across a different line. Not Dumbledore, who had always believed he could predict the pattern of children's hearts. Not Hagrid, who had trusted the first friend Harry chose. Not Sirius, who had built 13 years of survival on the image of a Gryffindor godson. Tell me whose path you could not stop thinking about, and why. If you wish to go further, stay, subscribe. There are other doors to open. Ravenclaw Harry, weighing prophecy against knowledge. Hufflepuff Harry, turning the war into a long, stubborn act of care. Darker rewrites where the same boy makes one different choice and never comes back from the forest. Lily was a charms prodigy, and even she could not foresee every consequence. We can walk those consequences slowly. Together, in the end, the hat takes your choice into account. Life does as well. Every day it sorts you again by what you do with your ambition, your fear, your love. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow because someone refused the story the world had written for them. What story are you quietly refusing right now, and what happens when it refuses to stay buried in the next part? But imagine, for a moment, that the hat had whispered a different word. Not Slytherin, not Gryffindor, not yet. Imagine it sliding the thought across his mind like a blade, Ravenclaw. In one world, Harry sits beneath blue and bronze, not as a warrior, but as an analyst of omens. He does not simply endure the prophecy, he dissects it. He treats each line as an equation, each clause a variable in a larger, terrible proof. Neither can live while the other survives becomes not doom, but a problem in magical logic. He charts possible solutions on parchment, maps out the Horcruxes years before anyone speaks the word, studies wand lore until the twin cores are not a mystery, but a known constraint in a larger, ruthless theorem. Voldemort faces not a reckless boy charging a graveyard, but a strategist who has already calculated the cost of every grave. In another world, the hat turns and Harry rises at the Hufflepuff table. yellow and black, earth and patience. He is not feared there, he is held. He learns the quiet magic of staying, of listening, of building a lattice of trust so dense that no Death Eater can slip between its strands. The Hufflepuff common room becomes a hidden citadel of loyalty, a place where secrets go to be protected, not exploited. Over 7 years he builds something Voldemort does not understand and therefore cannot kill. A network of students and families and forgotten squibs who will not break, who will not betray, who will still be passing messages and food and wands long after any Dark Lord falls. This is important. Armies can be shattered in a night. A culture of loyalty endures. Lily was a charms prodigy, but even she could not have planned for all these Harrys. Yet Voldemort would have needed a different plan for each. Against the Ravenclaw Harry, he must adapt to a boy who anticipates traps, who refuses open battle until the numbers suit him. Against the Hufflepuff Harry, brute terror fails, because fear cannot fracture bonds that have been tested in 100 small kindnesses. Which of these is the greater long-term threat to him, the mind that outthinks his magic or the heart that outlasts his cruelty? And then the pattern interrupts again. Because the most dangerous Harry may not belong to any single banner. What happens if the boy in green and silver thinks like a Slytherin, feels like a Hufflepuff, reasons like a Ravenclaw, and still moves like a Gryffindor the instant someone screams? Not Dumbledore, who had always believed in the power of choices, could predict that convergence. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from a ruined house, could see the man those contradictions would forge. Not Sirius, who had loved James's recklessness, could quite imagine James's son turning calculation into a weapon of mercy. So the question widens. If one altered sorting can bend a war, what could a dozen do? Which house swap, which fractured timeline calls to you? The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. The story was already a replica of what might have been. In the comments below, offer your own divergences, your own quiet refusals of canon, Hermione in Slytherin, Neville in Gryffindor's shadow made bright, Draco forced to wear blue and bronze. See the Great Hall one last time. 4 tables, 4 banners. One boy walking the length of the stone floor again and again in different worlds. In one, he sits among serpents and turns their ambition outward. In another, among eagles, and turns knowledge into a shield. Among badgers, and turns loyalty into an unbreakable charm. Among lions, and turns courage into fire. With every whispered choice, history reshapes itself, waiting always for which version of Harry stands up next. The grave of the lion was empty. The banner that might have hung above his bed in scarlet and gold was never raised. This is important. Instead, we return one last time to the room beneath the lake, where the water presses against the glass like a held breath. Green light filters down in slow, fractured shafts. Shadows of fish drift like memories across the stone ceiling. The Slytherin common room is almost silent now. The fire in the carved serpentine hearth burned low. The only sound the soft, constant murmur of the black lake beyond the windows. There is a chair near the fireplace. Once, a first-year boy sat there alone, robes too big, eyes too bright, listening to older students whisper the word Potter like a curse. In that chair, in this story, the boy who lived did not find instant belonging, he found a question. What kind of man does a child become when the world expects a replica of a Dark Lord, and he chooses instead to become something else entirely? The camera lingers as a quiet narration threads back through the years. From outcast to strategist, from suspected heir to reluctant savior. From the boy who heard Parseltongue in the walls and wondered if the snake in his chest was stronger than the scar on his brow, to the young man who mapped corridors, bargains, and loyalties with the same ruthless precision others mapped spells. He was still the child of prophecy, but now he was also the architect of a fragile peace, one built not only on courage, but on calculated mercy and carefully measured fear. We drift past the chair again. Harry is older now, shoulders broader, the line of his jaw harder. The green and silver tie at his throat is loose, as if he has forgotten he is wearing it. He watches younger students argue over homework, laugh too loudly, practice a new charm that misfires in a shower of harmless sparks. The house is different. Not a nest of future Death Eaters, but a crucible in which ambition is heated, hammered, and turned outward towards something larger than blood. Not Dumbledore, who had once looked down from the high table and seen only risk. Not Hagrid, who had muttered darkly about bad wizards in green. Not Sirius, who had spat the word Slytherin like an accusation. None of them are here now. Only Harry, alive in the half-light, knowing that the peace outside these walls was bought not by simple heroism, but by a plan that forced him to understand the enemy so well he nearly became one. Was this path harder, lonelier, more scarring than the bright camaraderie of Gryffindor would have been? If you could reach back through time, press your mouth to the brim of that patched hat, and whisper a different word into the cloth, would you dare to change the truth that followed? The camera tilts up. The Slytherin banner hangs above the hearth, its serpent faded, its edges frayed, tattered but still holding. The green darkens as the fire sinks to embers. The water outside the windows becomes only shadow. One last flicker of muted lake light brushes the serpent's eye. Then even that goes out. Fade to black. Let the silence sit. Let the boy in green linger in your thoughts a moment longer, before you leave this world behind. If you want to keep walking these darker paths and asking what else might have been, stay with us. There are more graves to open, more empty spaces where the story you thought you knew has already changed.